yourself in Zoom until arrival, if you can remember. But that's it. It's time. Y'all ready? Cool. Let's go. All right. Welcome to Wise Up on Air. Damian Kaspauer, product manager here at Audio Kinetic, working on Wise, and I'm super excited for today's action-packed jam with the folks from Heart Machine talking about hyper light breaker. But first I want to dig into some stuff that's happening. So let's go. Wise, it's an interactive audio tool. You know it. Hopefully you love it. And 25.1 is on the horizon because here we are. It's 2025. Greetings to folks in the chat. Good to see you today. But let's talk about 24.1 first. We launched last fall with some new exciting features for the property editor, which has gotten moved into a side panel as part of an object tab. And we've been taking your feedback through the survey and hearing more from you about the way that you're using the property editor and the new focused and iterative real-time workflow with live media transfer and expanded live editing. You've been out there, you've had your hands in the 2024.1 version, and if you haven't, it's available to you in the launcher to get your hands on right now. And like I said, we're taking your feedback and listening. We've heard you. There are things about the way you're interacting with properties, things that were lost with the ability to easily identify different aspects of the properties. And it's something we're trying to find our way towards the best synthesis for your workflows. So keep that feedback coming as we continue to dig into and iterate towards the future of Wise 2025.1 coming later this year. And thanks again for sending that feedback over. And folks out there using Strata, our sound library in multi-track format, well, there's just a ton there for you with almost 50 collections in this very unique and customizable way of creating sounds with all of the components across the integrations and our partners with the different subscription models. Well, Strata is there to really jumpstart your production, starting with sound in the digital audio workstation. We got a new collection for Combat Walla, bringing combat scenes to life. We've got some videos over on our Audio Kinetic YouTube channel going hands-on and deeper into what's part of that, as well as a new physics debris collection. So intricate impacts, delicate trickles. There's just more and more all the time coming to these collections. And you can jump in right now. We've got 3 free samples that you can download and get to work. Use them in your projects, royalty free, and just start getting into details with what Strata enables, including that new Strata Sample 3, which includes several sub-project selections from our large and in-charge physics collection. So jump in there, get your hands on Strata, and get going with interactive audio. So Audiokinetic out in the community, I'm excited to carry to you our plans to participate in the Game Developers Conference this year. We'll be there, but don't expect to see us on the expo floor this year because we're taking a different path. We're going to be at the AMC Metreon this year in Theater 14 on Wednesday and Thursday with a bunch of cool stuff lined up supporting and focusing on the game audio community. We're going to have an exclusive private screening of a documentary that we've been working on honoring the game audio community. It's a free documentary private screening. You just have to RSVP for it. We got a little QR code here for you to get registered. We're also going to have Wwise developer presentations both Wednesday and Thursday. It's going to be free entry. So whether you have a GDC pass of any kind or not, if you're in the San Francisco area, you can drop by and check out really cool presentations from Wwise developers who are part of the conference. There'll also be a community space there for folks who can network and talk about interactive audio. I'll be there along with a bunch of other folks from Audiokinetic, and it'd be great to see you there. And as I mentioned, Sounds of Dreamers, a documentary that we've been working on here at Audiokinetic, really surfacing the sentiment of the game audio community, something that I find very special, and I know a lot of folks do as well. And we've been working to surface what's special about the community in this documentary. And as I mentioned, we've got 2 days of presentations in the theater. We've already got confirmation from folks from the Marvel Rivals audio team. That game is on fire lately. So come hear more about what they've done with sound, as well as Split Fiction. Come on. For folks who aren't familiar with Hazelight and the work that they've done in the past, we had a 3-hour deep dive live stream on It Takes Two with the folks behind the sound for that game. They'll be coming out and talking more about their next co-op game, Split Fiction. And that's just the start of it. We're going to continue to announce other presentations that are part of the free proceedings at the AMC Metreon Theater on Wednesday and Thursday of the Game Developers Conference. And if you know me at all, you know that I love karaoke. And this year, the Audio Community Karaoke is sponsored by Audiokinetic. It'll be on the Tuesday of the Game Developers Conference from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. Get RSVP'd through this QR code and get ready to sing. For the last couple of years, Elvira Bjorkman has been coordinating this event, and we're headed back to the same spot to do an evening of community bonding through karaoke. What are you gonna sing? I can't wait to hear it. So that's what's happening with Audiokinetic at GDC. We're looking forward to seeing you. Get registered, get RSVP'd, and we'll see you on the ground in San Francisco. I want to keep shining a spotlight on the Wwise community.
Hello, everyone.
And for that, I'm going to
It's
bring
nice to be
on
here
a
on the stream.
special guest today
My
to talk
name,
about
can-
the community Wwise Godot integration with Alessandro Fama.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Now, hello, everybody.
One
I
second
see
while I get
the
you in focus. Hang
on-air
on, hang
message
on. What
box,
happened?
and
Where'd
that
we
means
go?
I'm really on air.
Finding you. I'm finding you.
Yeah,
Looking
thank you
for
for the
Alessandro.
invitation. My
Alessandro,
name, as you
where are
said, is
you?
Alessandro Fama. I'm a
Here we
field
go.
application
Coming
engineer at
soon.
Audiokinetic in the
Ah,
European office in the
ta-da!
Netherlands.
Live at last.
Before joining
Yes.
Audiokinetic, I was an audio programmer, and while working as a freelancer, I had this great idea of
Welcome,
creating the Wise
Alessandro.
Godot integration, which was a collaborative project started in 2020 alongside audio technology specialist Horacio from Spain. The integration is hosted on GitHub. It is openly available for download. I've maintained the integration over these years, and I still do it as part of my work. I remember the first version was targeting WISE 2019. And yeah, I still maintain integration because I love Wise, I love Godot as an open source game engine. And last month, I've released an update that supports the latest Wise version, 24.1. And I think that now we'll quickly go through the major updates. I think if we are on the slide, you can also scan the QR code in which you can find a summary of the updates in a blog post on our website.
Great. And do you want to talk about what's new for 24.1?
Yeah, there are several new features or updates in this latest release of the Godot, Wise Godot integration. One update was the introduction of the Wise project database as a data source for the integration. And what is the Wise project database? You have to think about in earlier versions of the integration, we only used the generated Wise IDs to display everything in the Godot engine. I don't know if many of you use the Wise IDs. It's a setting you can, the exported Wise IDs. It's a setting you can toggle in the project settings in Wise to generate the IDs alongside the sound banks. But we practically used this information the IDs gave us, namely the ID of each Wise object. May this be an event or a sound bank or a bus. And we use this information to display the Wise objects in the Godot editor. However, it turned out this approach had several limitations because it required the Wise authoring project to be open alongside the Godot editor to generate the IDs with WAPI. And this was problematic when team members didn't have Wise installed, for example. And also the lack of hierarchical overview of the Wise project. This means okay, you're back. Are you still online? Okay,
Yeah,
you're yeah.
still here and
Um,
hanging on, as they say, hang in there.
yeah, the Voice Project database. One disadvantage was the lack of hierarchical overview of the Wise project. This means that when you selected an object in the Wise speaker, you couldn't display work units or folders. So it didn't really represent the actual Wise project. And now in 24.1, we use the so-called Wise project database sample, which is a dynamic library you can find in the Wise SDK that provides more or less a memory-based database view of the state of the Wise project, or to say more accurately, of the project's generated sound banks. And this means the integration can easily query the states and information about the generated sound banks without using WAPI, for example. And this helped a lot in updating the Wise browser and the picker because we have all the great information, accurate information about the Wise project, and we can display this information in the picker that opens up when you select a Wise object in the inspector, similar to Unity. It's basically the same thing.
Perfect.
That's what I mean, or what we mean by data source. We have a memory database data source instead of with the WAPI connection to Wise. That was a major change, introducing this data source. Wise browser picker, yeah, support for Wise types. Wise types are great. They are like a collection of classes that represent core objects within Wise, like a sound bank, an event, a game parameter, state, switches. And how to use Wise types? You can export a Wise type in a Godot script. And by exporting, this is Godot terminology, we mean like serializing and making the Wise type available in the inspector for users to select it. A button will appear in the Godot inspector, allowing users to select the required object, an event, for example. And so a concrete example is really exporting a variable of a type Wise event, and then selecting the event from the Godot inspector, and then calling post, the function post on the variable you declared. And this workflow mimics the workflow you can find, for example, in the unit integration. And that's great because I love this workflow.
Excellent.
Another feature is finally support for auto-defined sound banks. I think auto-defined sound banks were added, if I remember correctly, in 22.1 to
Correct.
Wise.
Yep.
They bring a new asset management strategy to all the game engine integrations, and in general allow you to not have to worry anymore about managing your sound banks, loading and unloading them specifically in the game engine, and so on. This change required the previous changes, for example, the Wise project database to happen first, having the Wise types available because a lot of the loading happens there. And so everything comes together, having Wise types, auto-defined sound banks, project database, and it works out of the box, and I love it.
That's awesome. And really that auto-defined sound banks feature is all about like letting go of asset management and letting the game take care of that for you so that you don't have to manually generate sound banks. And while that's still a feature that's available inside of Wise to be able to group your events, letting go and having that level of granular asset management that just happens as a matter of course based on objects that are loaded and unloaded by the game, well, it's just something that gets you right into the process of creating a game with interactive audio using Wise right away.
If you need that level of manual management, you can, even in the Godot integration, you can still create your user-defined sound banks, and the integration will pick this information up directly, and you are able to have this mix workflow if you like. But if you want to use auto-defined sound banks, it works out of the box.
Awesome.
And last update feature was improving the plugin support across all platforms. And the integration already supported plugins, but they were hard to set up because users had to recompile the integration that is available on GitHub and explicitly enable the desired plugins that users wanted to use. But with this update, you don't have to compile anything anymore. Plugins work out of the box. The integration actually through the Wise project database recognize that, okay, the Wise project actually uses plugins, and so we automatically activate them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a small change that helps even when you try to use a plugin and you get an error message and discover, okay, you have to recompile the integration. That's not a cool workflow I would like to have in an engine integration.
Yeah.
So that's a great app.
Awesome.
And
it's so great to have you, out there working on this community integration alongside the work that you're doing as a field engineer. Can you just lay it down for folks? What do they need to get started with Wise and Godot?
So yeah, I think after having discussed these updates, maybe the question, as you said, is how do you get started at all? How can I try it out? How's the installation process? I think the getting started is a pretty simple process with the Godot integration. Literally visit the GitHub repository or Google Wise and Godot is the first thing that comes up. And in the GitHub repository, we have a release section. Download the latest release, which right now is in sync with the latest Wise release, which is 24.1.2. We have a great wiki section on the repository with a actual getting started guide that will guide you through the 3 steps. I think you can get started in 5 minutes. And additional to that, you will find documentation, code examples, images for various integration functions, how to post an event, setting RTPCs. You will find a lot of help there. And if that is not enough, we have a Discord community. You can find the QR code in the slide, the QR invite code in the slide. It's a small community of Wise and Godot creators or enthusiasts. There are some experienced Wise users there. There are other users that are new to Wise or Godot or to both. And you are very welcome to join and ask questions about integration or to share your work. That's a great way to connect and share also ideas about how the integration works and getting feedback, which is very important for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so inviting the community to dig in with Godot and this community integration of Godot and Wise. So thanks so much for being here with us today, Alessandro. It's great to have you out there in the community, working with developers and yeah, building this Godot integration for the community out there.
Thank you very much for inviting me and looking forward to the presentation today of the team.
Fantastic. All right. Well, here we are arriving at the Wise Developer Spotlight. Scalable audio crafting the soundscape of procedurally generated worlds. I want to invite the members of the audio team from Heart Machine to Wise Up on Air today. Welcome to the live stream. How's
Hi.
everyone doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I know Troupe's in the middle of moving, so a little crazy.
Wild
Troop.
times. Yeah, and wild times here on the stream too. So, thanks for folks in the chat calling out some of the audio sync issues. Keep us posted. We're going to keep, finding the right flow here as part of the live stream, and appreciate folks raising their hand out there. Let's do some short introductions with the team. Do you want to kick it off for us, Alex?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so hi, Alex Johnson. I'm audio lead at Heart Machine, sound designer. Been doing it for many years now. Really excited to be here. Troupe?
Yeah, I'm Troupe Gammage. I'm the music lead on Breaker and one of the composers, along with Joel Korlitz. And I've been at Heart Machine for close to 7 years now. It's my second project with them, and all new set of challenges. It's been very fun. Horacio, you're still muted, I think. So before you introduce yourself, just to make sure, because I screwed that up. I'll go for it.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now.
You are unmuted.
Perfect. So yeah, great to be here. Thank you, Damien, for the invitation to the show. My name is Horacio Valdivieso. I'm the tech audio designer. I also do some gameplay audio programming here at Heart Machine. So yeah, and I'm the new guy in the team because I haven't been here for I don't think even a year. So it has been crazy. It has been awesome, and yeah, love being here and working with the rest of the team.
Great. Well, and I'll just say it up front, congrats on hitting, early release and being out there, living out loud with, the current state of development, working with the community to understand how these systems are arriving. Like and building it alongside the community. It's great to be here, bringing the work that you've done so far and helping to frame the systems in Hyperlight Breaker. So I'm super stoked to jump in and start talking about the cool things y'all are up to. Shall we?
Yeah.
Set the stage for us. So tell me more about Hyperlight Breaker, what the game is, and how you approach it from an audio perspective.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so and this is going to be an interesting talk because we are in the thick of development still. The run up to early access was quite a lot of work, and now we're at like a pretty consistent pitch, which it actually feels pretty good, and it's nice to be doing that crunchy work. It's interesting to put this all of this information together, and it's also it's interesting to share this with everybody. It is the project is incomplete, so all right, are we sharing the presentation? Is that
Presentation is up and you are go.
Okay, wow. Right. So here we are. Let's just get this talk started. So we've already done some introductions of the team. Two people who couldn't make it today were Joel Korlitz and Akash Thakar, our other composer and sound designer. But you've met the rest of us, so hello. We've got a little roadmap of these are the things that we're intending to cover. And I would actually really like if people take the Q&A, like lean into it, because we're going to try to remain focused on a couple of key points that feed into our core challenges with this project. And I think that it leaves a lot of room for discussion, and there are a lot of things that we don't have a tidy way of discussing yet, but we're happy to be open about. So for our talk, first we'll lay out our vision and challenges. Like this is what if you don't know anything about game audio, we want you to understand this is what we want it to be like when we're done. Like this is what our true goal is, right? And then the challenges are what are the things that are getting in our way to do that. We're going to talk about our audio priority system, how we handle music in an open world, how we handle ambience in this systemic environment as well. And then we'll go through an example of how we've set up the mix for some character sounds.
And
to
a
give
side
context,
note, we've got Joel in the chat as well. So other team members
wow,
phoning
sweet.
in from afar.
Hi, Joel.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that when you say systemic, that we're talking about procedural.
Yes. Yeah.
That in terms of the overview of the game, that there's quite a few curveballs in there to provide some context for why the immersive systemic ambience is more difficult than it might otherwise be, or the music systems are more difficult than they might otherwise be.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting road, but very gratifying. And through the talk, like what my hope is, like I think like a lot of the things that we're presenting are going to be kind of simple, but they're distilled to where they work as solutions in like a very flexible environment. Like that's our core thing here. All right, we do have an intro video that we should play.
Let's go. Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. Is that track Joel? Is that right, Troupe?
I actually couldn't see or hear that video, but I'm pretty sure
Oh,
that the
sure.
track that we selected is mostly Joel, but I did some work, like the beginning is me, and I sort of like massaged that track, which took a ton of iteration. That particular trailer was heavy on the iteration.
Yeah. Yeah. That was our announced trailer, right? I think.
Yeah, the gameplay
Yeah,
announce.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I love the music in this project. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about our vision. So, Hyperlight Breaker, it is in the world of Hyperlight. Hyperlight Drifter is a very popular game. Came out 10 years ago. I played it before joining the studio. I've been there for 5 years, I think. And I remember playing it and absolutely falling in love with it. Like that, it's a game that very can touch people very deeply, and we have a lot of passionate fans. So it is a open world multiplayer roguelike. And we're in early access development, as we've talked about. So because it is related to Hyperlight Drifter, because it's in this universe, we have these core things that we want to hit. These are like our aesthetic targets, right? We want to evoke emotional resonance. We want people to feel the delta between exploration and discovery. Like, yeah, I mean, that and combat and, you know, these sort of like peaks and valleys. And we should also say, you know, Hyperlight Drifter is a single player. It's a single player game. It's open world, but it's got these sort of like Zelda dungeons that you kind of have to crawl through, and there's a build in there. There's all this, like it's awesome. So we want to deliver that. That's the thing that I love about it. That's the thing that a lot of people love about it, is that feeling. Like it really, really feels like it's pulling you along. It's got this intent, you know? And so we want to also feel intentional with our project, no matter what the genre is going to be. So we've got this open world multiplayer roguelike. It is so this is how I would kind of like I would frame our genre, right? So what are the things that we want to do there? Well, we want to be reactive to what happens in the game. You don't want the music to be off in the wrong place while something is happening, right? We want the music to be reflective of where we are. So you have like time-based, you have location-based. You want to really like set a mood, right? And we also, because it's an action game, we need to be clear, we need to be informative. You know, maybe this leans a bit more into the sound design side, but we want to have impact, and we want players who are playing the game, especially because it's multiplayer, to know what is important to them. Like they have to have that clarity and impact. We're going into early access. You know, we've got a long road ahead of us of things that we want to do. So through the 3 years or so that we were working on this, we had a lot of conversations about what do we want to show the world initially, and what do we want to show them at the end? Because you can't, I mean, early access is a weird thing, because you like, I think people don't understand what games are like a year before they come out. And so if you are very like broken, and it's like, you know, you can play half of it, and then you got to use a cheat code to skip things, and then this and this and this, and like that's like true, you know, like maintaining that stuff is a lot of work. And us in an audio team, you know, like what do we want to present? We want to present like a polished product, you know, like you have the game, and audio can go deep and it has to tie in deep, but in the end, what you're doing is sort of like summarizing. You're taking like 10% of what's happening in the game and saying like, well, this is gonna impact music, and this is the thing that you're gonna hear here, and this, and then you have like a clear tapestry of like, well, this is what people care about when they're at this point.
Yeah.
So we want to deliver that as best as we can, but we also have to be prepared for the future.
Yeah, and I want to
So
focus on a
yeah,
couple
oh,
things
please,
here.
yeah.
Like you've got Hyperlight Drifter, so we're talking about iterating on a theme for
Oops.
Hyperlight Breaker, right? So you've got that first piece where it's like you're taking a well-established and well-understood aesthetic and iterating it, which is point two, you know, open world multiplayer roguelike. That's like three genres mashed up. And I wonder for my benefit, or maybe just to put a definition behind roguelike, like what does that mean?
Oh, sure. That's a really good a good call out. I just kind of skipped over it. So in a roguelike, the game's going to be randomized, right? So you are you they're sort of like it's an evergreen. The idea is that it's an evergreen game that you would play.
Yeah.
Like I know that this is silly, but I think about chess as an example. It's pretty far removed from the game Rogue, but like chess doesn't have a story. You don't sit down and play chess and be like, ah, that's great, and then never play it again. You know, it's chess is something that you can pull out, and every time you play it, you're sort of like, well, I'm going to start here and I'm going to get this experience, and that all the mechanics inside of it, that's the thing that you are engaging with.
Yeah.
So a roguelike, if it's presented well, can take that element or that class of games and then try to deliver single player like the kind of experience that you would get in a non-randomized game,
Yeah.
but fresh every time.
And really that's
Which,
the
yeah,
key word, right? Randomized. Go ahead.
yeah, just in this case, what that basically means is, you know, delivering a hyperlight drifter every time you kind of start a game, and not even like a new game, but like a play session. So
Yeah.
you're basically going in and we're trying to create the world around you that is as engaging and interesting and dynamic as Hyperlight Drifter was. But when you leave that world, we just wipe it away and start again and do a completely new thing. So yeah, all of the authorship that Alex is talking about in terms of like the flow and the dynamics and the pacing of the original game, we are basically having to generate with math, and then that means the terrain is being generated, the placement of enemies and everything's being generated, but that means that also the audio has to be generated, and we basically have to come up with more like rule sets for why does this audio get more intense, why does this shift occur in terms of mood, and that can't be because they went through this door, because we don't know what's behind the door on the other side of the door. It's just they're now in a new space, and we have to define what type of space that might be, and we have to use new data to figure that out. So it's essentially the goal is to create like a mini hyperlight drifter experience each time the player does a run, and every time they do a run, they get a new version of that. So
Perfect. Perfect. Well
yeah.
described. And again, I think it's such an innovative gameplay style that has emerged over the past few years. I'm looking forward to seeing how you met that challenge with the different systems that you're going to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've also broken down, we've broken down some specific things that are difficult for each of these, right? So if we look at Hyperlight Drifter is this lo-fi, it's a retro styled game. So it's got retro styled sound. It's sort of I think of it as like you're looking at this world through a filter, and because we've got Akash on the team, and Akash was the sound designer in Hyperlight Drifter, we have access to all of the source stuff that he did. We can dig into it, we can reuse the finished product, or we can go to the what he used to make it. But what you find very quickly is that a lot of the texture and flavor comes from the processing that was done. And it's like half that and half the original source. And if you take that original source and try to do something high fidelity with it, you don't end up somewhere that you want to be. So we had to think of the world like what if you removed that filter? Like, what is it that it's obfuscating? And so this was a challenge. Next challenge, it is open world, it is multiplayer, it is a roguelike. These are all major challenges for audio. Open world, player can go anywhere. It's unpredictable which direction they will go. Multiplayer, people can go in different directions and trigger events. Roguelike, any direction people go, they're hitting random things that you can't like hand place anything in a map anyway. So like that's just, so I'm just talking about like just one thing about like world exploration, but you get into like everything that we say where it's like, oh, like the job of audio is to sum things up. You have to have very, very clear rules if you want to have like a consistent output, right? So we have we also have like because it's multiplayer, the you have like gameplay can feel like have like a certain intensity or chaos in single player and then be different in multiplayer. You know, in multiplayer, you know, I don't care about the things that are attacking other players and all this. So we also are in early access development, and we kind of touched on this already, but this is difficult for audio, right? Because if our job is to summarize, but the game's design might change because we're not done. Like the game is not done, you know, we're working on it. So we have to present what we want to present now, and we want to present something complete at the end, and we don't want to throw away work because we're a small team. So it's a small team for how wide we had to go on this project.
Yeah.
And it's important that every hour, every day counts, that I have a belief that you know, a lot of people who are better sound designers are just better at making decisions, so their time is effective, so they make a decision, they move forward, they make it like you do the thing, you lock it in and you move on, because then at the end of the day they've got more detail in their work, right? So we had to find the point where we can be decisive about how to move forward with the system so that we could really lean into it and end up with something that we can keep. And we have like we'll get into it maybe later in the Q&A or something, but we did things like we like built a music system that we didn't touch for a year and watched the game go through like all these different changes, and the music just still works. You know, the ambience still works. Like, so that was good because then we could focus on other things.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's something smart here in that grand overview, which is really just focused on knowing what you need to prioritize, making sure that you have something in place to help validate the system, like you just said, standing up music early, allowing it to, you know, stay flexible through the changes. Well, you prioritized well in that case because you could, you know, stand up these systems, let the iteration happen, and what you built was a testament to the flexibility of it. So just wanted to reinforce that.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
I think if we could summarize like this, the bottom two sections of this, I think it would basically be like, we just don't know anything. Like we don't know anything the player's doing. We don't know what the design team is going to do. And so it's essentially building systems that don't need to really know anything, that can basically just react to like the most limited possible data and you know, limited inputs to give a guided output, you know, a directed output.
Yeah.
So,
Well
you
said.
know, it's really difficult, but also it's really robust. And then kind of as Alex was saying, it's like if you're smart about it, then the outputs end up being a lot greater than the work that's necessary, you know, but it took a lot to get there.
Yeah.
It's been a journey.
And so I think like, you know, this is probably a good place to start for this. This is a core system. We have an audio priority system. That's a core system that ties into a lot of other things. We don't really need to go in depth into how this works, but I really want to talk about the output. These are becoming more common. Overwatch famously like got a lot of mileage out of this, and a lot of people do this now. So but just to kind of review the way that this works and the way that we utilize it, you give characters a base score, you evaluate them and put it through like you say like, oh, how far away are they attacking, are they targeting someone else, and whatever, and you end up with something you can multiply their base score by, and then you take all those totals, all those characters, you chuck them in a list, sort the list, and then you say who's the most important right now, right? So that's how we take the raw threat score, and we do this to get this threat rank. This is the core reason why you would do this. But what we realized, like, and this was kind of cool because we had this realization and then cooked this up in about 3 hours or less, got this up and running. If you just add all those scores together, then you have an intensity value you can use to drive music, and you're not waiting on design to finalize the way that they're handling like combat interactions. Like, are we in combat? Are we out of combat? And you talk to them and they're like, well, I mean, like, you're close to a character, you're fighting them, like that's where you're at. You make an object that you make an AI that can fight you, and you run up to it and it finds you and it starts fighting you and whatever.
Yeah.
But you don't have these clearly defined rules early in development. And also these rules can change, like the way those things function can change. So it was good to have this super flexible system that we could always attach music to. You could always go to this and say, hey, when the global intensity is up, I want to turn down all the Foley. When global intensity is up, I want to turn down ambience, or I want to increase the compression on this, or I want to do whatever,
Yeah.
So we have our global value, we have our character individual value, which we have on every character. So you can choose if you want to do something to a sound on that character, you can.
Well,
you
and
know what their threat rank is.
You're talking about a game parameter that, as audio designers and music designers, that you can rely on in your toolbox to do things, right? So it becomes part of the language of interactive audio to grab these parameters and attach them to things, like you said in the examples, to make changes based on what's happening systemically in the game, because you don't know, you can't plan, but you do have these tools in the toolbox to leverage what's happening in real time.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. It's like it's a question of like, what can I rely on, right? Like, I can rely on this. Like, what is the data that I can rely on? Then like what your inputs might be to then build a system, right? I'm sorry, Horacio, were you gonna?
Yeah, what is interesting as well is that some other disciplines might have systems similar, but not necessarily translatable to audio or what we need. So, like, you might have different enemies that have different ranks and different, let's say, how dangerous they are, right? But and that's good and that's useful. But at certain points, we want to know which one is the most dangerous right now, because we want to give that character focus now, right? So it might not be the most dangerous enemy in the group. It actually might be for now, for audio, it might be kind of like the least important, because it's far from, the farthest from me, right? And so I think what was interesting is kind of like to get these other systems and sort of like translate them to what is useful for us. And so, yeah, I think kind of like the idea, which I think it came from AJ, from Alex, to create a separate, threat combat audio system was like a great idea. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think if I could sort of pilot us through a thought experiment here. Let's imagine you've got 5 enemies and they're attacking you, and they're not. Some of them are attacking you, some of them aren't. The ones that are attacking you or about to attack you, they're louder and they're more full, right? And then what if you're only fighting one enemy? Then that enemy is in this list all by itself. So our mix will sound nice and full. So it'll still be, maybe when there's a ton of enemies, it's here. And then when there's only one enemy, it's here, but it's not like here. So this, for the non-audio people, like this isn't something that we solve by just saying like, well, the non-important stuff is really quiet because it is, you want them to be quiet sometimes,
Yeah. Great example.
Okay, now we have another video. We're gonna jump right into like ambience and music. We just need the priority system as awareness.
Right. Here comes video 2.
Hi, this is Horacio Valdivieso, tech audio designer at Hard Machine. In this video, I want to show you how the Overgrowth music works in Hyperlight Breaker. The music in Hyperlight Breaker was composed by Joel Corlitz and our music lead, Troupe Gammage, whom also designed the music system. Please have in mind that our game is in early access, so these systems might change throughout development until its final release. I am in the Audiokinetics Wwise authoring tool, and I have several music audio events placed in this Soundcaster. All these events belong to one biome or region in the Overgrowth, specifically what we call biome number 3, or the Jeweled Spire. Hyperlight Breaker's main game loop happens in a procedurally generated world with distinct biomes. Each biome uses 3 main music events: the shortform layer in green, the combat layer in red, and the longform layer in purple. The shortform and combat layers are implemented as sound effects in the actor-mixer hierarchy. These are tempo-less ambient type pieces that require random trigger rate playback. In contrast, the longform layers are implemented in the interactive music hierarchy and are pieces that are meant to play without any type of randomization, from the entry cue to the exit cue. The first event that plays when the local player enters the biome is the combat layer, which is not audible at first because its activity is driven by the combat intensity RTPC. Then the short layer starts playing as well. Let's listen. When the combat intensifies, you will hear more activity. Check the voice monitor on top and see how many voices are now active. To progress in Hyperlight Breaker, you need to defeat some elite enemies. And at those moments, we play a stinger, which also ducks the music bus where the rest of the music objects are routed. After some time, the game engine stops the short-form layer and plays the long-form layer. Because combat can also happen when the long-form layer is active, the combat layer is active as well and blends in accordingly. when the playhead reaches the exit queue, the game engine receives a callback from the audio engine to start the cycle again. All device events and rules for each biome's music are contained in data assets called music packages and then processed by our music manager.
Back to it, and wow, what a great overview. I have to say your layout for auditioning, that's like chef's kiss beautiful. I love seeing how different people work in Wwise. And meanwhile, great overview of exactly what we were talking about before, using the game parameter to drive the music, and fantastic music examples. But there was a lot in there. So unpack a bit of what we just saw, and let's talk more about all that cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I guess this would be like a kind of like a collaboration now with Troupe, because he's kind of like the mastermind of this music system. But yeah,
Maybe
so
maybe it'd be good to start with that, like to say like what we're
Yeah, like
like what's our
overview.
overall, like what's the goal, like what's the output that we want, right?
Yeah, and then like how Horacio refined it over time to kind of get to where we are. Because yeah, I think that the main objective here is sort of a continuation of Solar Ash, which was very um, open, but not multiplayer, not procedural, but still the player could do a lot of different things, right? So we had kind of a relatively simple uh, music system that was able to like react to different activities the player can do. Because I think Alex is the director at Art Machine, really likes to have games where there's not action. Okay, you've done the big fighting scene. Now you go down a hallway. You're walking. The player's hurt. You walk really slow. There's blood on the screen or whatever. Okay, now there's a big cutscene or whatever. It's all just happening in the game, right? So the goal with the music was like, we want an almost like Breath of the Wild-esque ambient music system. Um, and then we also want music that has identity and has personality, because obviously, the Hyperlight Drifter is a game that took from the original Zeldas, which have tons of personality in the music, have all those themes and kind of memorable moments. It's hard to deliver that in a game that's open world, but Breath of the Wild has big, expensive set pieces and these big moments that we don't really have the budget for. So other than the bosses, we don't have a lot of those moments. So we kind of needed to put like real identity and real personality into the world in the same kind of context as these very ambient systems. So the game basically switches back and forth between them. But the difference with this game compared to Solar is when you're in that that sort of ambient mode musically, we call it like short form and long form music. So long form being like it's a minute or 2 minute, 3 minute piece of music that's composed. Short form is there's just a bunch of stuff. And in Solar, it was kind of one track that existed. Like you've got kind of a bed, and then you've got like these phrases that can play. But in this game, there's a lot more different type of stuff that can go on, and the worlds are much more detailed, and we want to have more control over, there's time of day, there's weather, there's different kind of zones within each biome. And so there's a ton of different buckets of music, basically, that are all, 10 to 25 seconds long. And they just get mixed up. It's all in the sound design hierarchy, and they just get mixed up and played kind of together. And all of the rules are based on just the random containers. It's just, after 5 seconds, plus or minus, start playing this phrase, and then come back again in 25 seconds, plus or minus. And when you've got like 4 or 5 of those all interacting, they create sort of different mixtures of like harmony, of melody, and it's basically the same thing for the combat. So when Horacio in that video was demonstrating the combat music, that's not like a piece that was composed. It's basically a series of layers that enter at different combat intensities. And then there's phrases that are using that same kind of system where they're getting re-triggered. Uh, and those phrases also are getting, they're like on blend containers, getting swapped in and layered in as the combat goes up. And as it goes down, you start to lose those like kind of more propulsive layers, and you get back to something that's a little bit more like kind of prickling, a little tingle in the spine. And so you're always like moving through those different emotional states rather than just like there's a goblin that shoots an arrow at you. Like the combat, Rich Disaster Piece worked on Solar Ash with me was like, oh, you want to do like combat drums? And he was like, said it so pejoratively that I was like, well, we can't do that now, I guess. I guess we're not just going to do like a layer of drum. When you say it, it's, oh yeah, maybe we bring in a layer of drums. And he's like, oh yeah, just combat drums. Like, okay, and like, well, no, we don't want to do that. So we put a lot more like kind of nuance into that value of the combat intensity. That's not just like when it's greater than 50, then we just transition to a new music state. All those layers actually kind of exist up and down the spectrum. And when the long form music is playing, that also interacts with that combat layer. So as that combat is happening, you're listening to this like composed piece of music. But look, if you get into some heavy stuff, it needs to react. So that music kind of ducks down, and those combat layers come in. And I think it's something we want to explore more as we get into early access, like how we transition in and out and adding even more detail and more variety to those combat layers. And there's tons of cool stuff we can do with all of the music systems, corresponding to like how much foliage is around you, changing the aesthetic, or okay, you're up high on a cliff, like maybe we have these more wispy phrases than if you're like down in the valleys. Basically using data, you can do things that are much, much more reactive than I've got 2 or 3 layers of this track and either they're playing or they're not playing. This is like completely abstract and impressionistic, and that gives you a lot more ability to kind of mix the paints, so to speak, and gives you access to a lot more interesting colors.
Yeah, if I could kind of, I recall some conversations we had early on when we were developing this system, and like the idea is that if I could kind of bring it back, like the idea is that you have like by having a flexible system, we have a fuzzy backdrop that's always 80% right, and that fuzzy backdrop, you can then interrupt it. We made this system to be interruptible, right? So we could, if something else happens, like we're already in the right spot, cool, we can cut in and do this thing for this event. And then when we come back, we have like this can all come in kind of naturally. These are both places where once you get them stood up, you can then come back and say, well, how can I add more detail to the ambient system? Because all the stuff that is being described by Troupe was not there in the beginning. Like that stuff that was added over time to the system, and the system never broke. We used to have a day-night cycle that was 1.5 minutes long. We used to have biomes that were on separate islands. We used to have biomes that were separate levels. We have biomes now that touch each other. Like we watch it go through each of these iterations, and we come back and be like, oh, it still works. Like this fuzzy thing is still there. So you can add detail there, and then you can add detail to your events,
Yeah, and maybe I'm picking at a couple of things here, right? You've got these tiny little short nuggets of compositional flavors that are not time constrained, so they don't need to line up in time. You're shifting them in some kind of patterns of randomization or behavior, and then you've got the moment to moment properties that are feeding that system. So again, locations, threat levels, different parts of the gameplay feeding it that allow it to move very swiftly or adapt very swiftly to what's happening in the game. And I think it's while also having the background music, if I can call it that, that you can fall back on for a kind of heartbeat or rhythmic
Exactly.
pulse when
That's
you
far
need it.
less reactive. It's almost like we have the sort of completely reactive to the player, and then the I just don't really care that much. Like I want to assert a mood, which is so core to all those like Super Nintendo games and all the
Yeah,
games that we grew up playing, where there's just a composer came in and said, "This is what the level is like. This is the emotion you should have." There isn't reactivity because the gameplay is much more straightforward,
yeah,
and I think we really want that, but we also recognize that we really need that level of reactivity. And as Alex was saying, there's also a lot of stuff that happens in the game, and what that stuff is has changed.
yeah,
So we have to be able to say the player like activated a beacon, the player like killed a significant enemy or made significant progress to their objective, and that might change from week to week, like what that actually is.
yeah,
And if you've got these like big chunky systems and then that core stuff that you're relying on changes, it makes it impossible to like, well, we had the three layers, and the three layers were if they were doing this, this, and this, and all three of those things changed.
yeah,
So, all those systems kind of are able to just take a stinger really fast, and we'll just make a change as the player like approaches something. We'll try to kind of duck things down, but we also just allow stingers to sit on top of things, and
yeah,
we've basically tried to build it in such a way that if the design changes or if design adds a new feature, it's sort of additive to what we have, as opposed to, oh, how do we go back to the beginning and figure out how to put this in? And so that's, in terms of the early access side, all this stuff could change because the design could change.
yeah,
And again, the player, we don't know where they're going to go, so we have to use data instead of like hand drawing regions or whatever. So all these systems are really there to
yeah,
basically give us an opportunity to have authority where we want and say this is our artistic vision, and then on the other side be able to just say the player is the artist. I truly don't. I'm not doing anything. I'm not like composing any sort of strong idea here.
yeah.
This is like the player's creation and composition almost.
Well, and I want to focus on a word that was mood. And of course, Joel, a huge fan of his work going all the way back to Unfinished Swan,
Yeah,
Hohokam,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
no stranger to establishing strong moods. And I'm interested to hear where the intersection is between composition in this, granular way. Like, how do the two of you work together to, and hopefully I'm not jumping ahead in the presentation and I'm in the right place with this question, but it's
No, I
this
think
idea
so.
of like, how do you, once you've established that, you're going to take this approach of tiny little pieces that intersect, right? How are you iterating or working towards getting what you need to support the mood of the game on a moment to moment basis with the music?
Yeah, I mean that's something that I think I benefited a lot from kind of being a one man army on Solar Ash with building these types of systems where I was like truly, rendering things out, dropping them in Unreal, and just like pressing play and writing down like notes on a piece of paper. And I sort of like got that. I developed the vocabulary, I think, to be able to identify like this is this basically doesn't work as a composition, but how can we make it work in the game as a experience, I
Got it.
guess, to call it more of an experience than a composition. And so on this project, I was basically my role as like music lead had nothing to do with like the aesthetic of the music. That was totally me and Joel collaborating on that stuff. But it was in terms of how does this actually get translated into this world where the design is changing, and even if the design didn't change, the world changes every time. So I basically kind of did some mock-ups. I made some stuff, and then I said, Joel, here's kind of the idea. And he did stuff differently than what I would do, and I would put it in the game and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, let me reconfigure. Like I'm kind of feeling a vibe from this. This is actually amazing. I didn't think to do this, but these like are incredible because they add this like flow and continuity. And but if you could do some things that are more like what I did, like bring those back in, and I'm going to do some more stuff that's actually like what you did. And we basically just kind of went back and forth, um, only really in the context of the game, because it's so hard to evaluate this stuff,
Yeah,
just like to a video or just as an MP3 or something. And so we
totally.
basically just put assets in until we really got comfortable with it. And at this point, I think honestly, it's like we'll both do, a pile of like 60 assets, and there's like two that we both of us will be like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to say anything. And he's like, no, 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 I know, I hate that one. And I'm like, okay, good, because I'm gonna go mute a bunch of mine as well.
Yeah.
But we've gotten to the point where it's like it's not really just composition, but it is some other sixth sense thing. It's like some other skill that you develop, that is basically just kind of using this musical language of like 10
Yeah.
to 25-second snippets and making something out of it that feels like music. And it's really interesting the results that you get.
Yeah. We talk about iteration in game audio or game development a lot, but I'm also hearing improvisation, right? Between the two of you, between the game as it's evolving, throwing
Yeah.
stuff in, like you said, not really understanding the value of something that has been made for it until you hear it in context. Like, does this
Yeah.
support what is unfolding on the screen and the way that we're doing it? And then if not, what do we need to change? And are you doing any cross collaborative remixing would be a question. Like you get an asset, it's stemmed out and you're pulling chunks of it in order to tuck into different parts of the music system.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we made a lot of stuff, and the game did actually change, as Alex referred, kind of alluded to, like the day-night cycle changed dramatically. And so there's actually stuff where we did initially separate passes that then kind of had to get merged. And it's a process of me going through being like, I love this one that Joel did, but I think my thing for this layer works a little bit better. These layers actually, like, it is all in the same key. So this can just kind of come in, and we'll just combine these things. So there's stuff that's like really kind of totally Joel, there's stuff that's totally me, and then there's stuff that's truly like we don't even we can't even tell at this point. It's kind of like we're really happy about that as composers, that there's a lot of moments where it's Joel's like, did I do that? That's yours, right? I'm like, I had the exact same thought. And after like 15 seconds, I was like, no, that is definitely something I did. But there might be something that starts playing, and I'm like, that part I swear I didn't do. I'm pretty sure Joel did that, but did that make it into that system? So there's a lot of that. And I think even with Horacio doing implementation, I'll ask for something very vaguely, and he's like, here's what I did. And I took the liberty of like, here's like the interpolation speed that I used, or I sent it to this reverb bus, or, I had them blend in this way. And that's its own aesthetic, that contributes to the overall sound. And I think it's that sort of chain all the way up and down. And then Alex Johnson is like, hey, I just did a mix change, and I think it adds a lot of clarity to the music. And you're like, oh my God, that's insane. And like all the systems were kind of getting buried, but now they're so much clearer. So it's truly like, I wouldn't consider the system or the music or anything to be like in any way the work of any individual. I think it's really, a stack of process from top to bottom that only makes sense as the context becomes more clear in the game, which is, that's the early access thing. And this is where we are right now. But I think all of these things will improve over time. So it's really exciting because I think it's like solid where it is now.
Amazing.
Yeah, so these I just want to show folks this diagram here that I created for myself, actually. One of the many diagrams that I created because I have to admit that at some point I was starting to get lost. Like, okay, what happens if this happens? And then, but also if this happens, we don't want that, right? And so this is kind of like a overview of the whole music system. And every node in itself, it's a subsystem of this big system. So, I mean, we can talk about the hub music, just itself, right? And of course, we won't do that because that would be crazy. And what I showed in the video that we just watched is the purple one, the one that says Overgrowth biomes, which we can, dig in. But as you can see, sort of like there are many rules, right? Especially if you add up the multiplayer aspect, right? I mean, things don't behave the same if we are in like a, multiplayer session. And so all of those things have to be considered, right? So, okay, I'm supposed to have the control remote to the presentation. Let's try it. Yes. Okay, good. And so, what what we saw in the video is this part, which is kind of like the the uh, the music system where when we are in the biomes in the overgrowth, right? Kind of like the part where the main game loop happens, right? And so we didn't implement the whole system in one music event, right? And so the main reason, of course, we wanted to be flexible, but the main reason is that we wanted features, or Joel and Troupe wanted features to play music that only exists in the actor mixer hierarchy. So like, as sound effects, right? But also we want to use the interactive music hierarchy as well, right? And so we had to come up with something sort of like hybrid, right? Like between Wise and our engine, which is Unreal Engine, right? And so we cycling between this long form layer, short form layer, plus adding the combat layer that it's always like alive, but it will fade in, fade out depending on the combat intensity, right? And so we want this for variety, and also because, as I said here in the slide, there's no golden path. I mean, we don't know what the player will do, and so we created, and actually, this is a naming an idea that when I joined the team, it was already kind of like defined music packages, right? So and pretty much music packages are like data assets, right? Which is an effort that I made, I guess, since I joined the studio to move a lot of the systems to a more data-oriented approach. And with that, I mean separating the functionality from the data,
Yeah.
right? That is like very important and has been very important for us, especially because we are in early access, and we have like, there's like a development branch that has the production, while we keep like in another branch doing other things, right? And so if less people are involved and touching one thing, right, less conflict in the end, right? And so you shouldn't need to change the code or change a blueprint, if you're using Unreal Engine, if you want to change an event that is being played by a character. You shouldn't. I mean, if you're doing that, then it's something that you have to consider, because it's just data, right? So and so we created these audio music packages, right? And so it's kind of like a combination of different events with different rules that determines what is going to happen, or at least in some way, because we don't know exactly, because for instance we have some timers, right, that are ticking, and maybe it might be 2.5 seconds, it might be 3 seconds. It's kind of part of the procedurally or random nature of our game also, right? So we give this to a music manager that we created, and that's kind of like the conductor, let's say, of the and so we use some interesting features like using callbacks, right?
Which
and player
define
launch.
those for folks?
Yeah, so the audio engine, right? The music, well, not just the music, but the sound effects as well, but the music, especially interactive music hierarchy, the part of that in the engine ticks musically, right? I mean, on tempo, right? So sample accurate. So you can know, you can ask Wise, in this case, the audio engine, to inform whatever other system when something happens with that music, right? I mean, we want to know when we reach the end of the bar, or maybe the end of a marker that you put there. Or in our case, we just use, the exit cue, right? So it's like when this piece reach the exit queue, this sequence reaches the exit queue, let me know, right? So I can call the other short form again and kind of like keep the music flowing, right?
Perfect. Thank
Music
you.
moving.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was an interesting and it's something that might change. I don't know, something that might evolve, something that we have to add up or delete stuff. But we are fine because we are developing in a data oriented, so we can style, so we can get rid of stuff or add stuff, and it's not going to block anyone from, it's not going to break anything,
Nice.
hopefully.
Smart.
Yeah, I'll kind of about the music packages, like the way that I've kind of I think the reason why they came about is that we were working on the music system. Music system has all these moving parts. You have, you know, like these long form things and these short form things, and then this combat layer. They can all coexist, but not this one. Not supposed to be over here with this. And so we had like all of these parts, right? And but the way that we were talking about it when we would have like meetings about like, okay, we got to do this. We got to we got to fix this. Got to do this thing with the bio music and the combat music here. It's not doing. We realized like we are talking about. You can encapsulate a certain amount of music together as one thing, as a logical group that is the way that we are thinking about it already. And it was not really grouped that way anywhere in the project. And so it's like, well, let's call that a music package. And it gives us clear lines for like the stuff that belongs in the music package and the data that belongs in the music package. And it can be nice and tight,
Yeah, I don't think
Nice.
we've mentioned explicitly that there's multiple biomes in the world, and that it was a clear directive early on that we wanted different music and obviously different ambience, which we'll talk about soon, in each biome because they're really visually distinctive. But they now started out as completely different levels. Then they got merged into one map, but they were three separate islands, and now they are just all one completely contiguous island, which means you can just walk over the border from one biome to the other. But they all kind of follow the same rules. So we were basically like recreating all of this logic and all this work, or being like, well, wait, what happens at nighttime in combat in the desert, but in daytime in the exploration and the snow? It was like made no sense. So everything sort of organizes those biomes, and all the biomes are in their own key. They're all unique keys, and everything is in that key. So you can play stingers, you can play layers and stuff over it, and all those rules are there's musical rules and code rules that dictate sort of how those things have to be composed so that the puzzle pieces fit together. And those are things that Joel and I just kind of know. Hey, don't I'm sorry, it's a limitation. You can't go crazy with modulations and stuff, but like keep some rails on where you are, like what the key center is, and then it all kind of gets filtered into these packages. But it's really a cool system now that we've built it all. It took a while to get there.
Right, because the layout of those biomes is procedurally generated, and
Yeah,
at any point through
it's
any
all
run,
data.
yeah,
Yeah,
right,
there's no barriers or like, oh, we'll just when you go past this choke point, we'll just flip the switch.
yeah,
It's like you literally is a pixel line that you can go back and forth across. So there's rules dictating those boundaries so that you don't create tons of crazy artifacts, and there's rules about how you do the switches, but it has to be totally fluid. And that design could always change, and the space could
yeah,
increase, or they could get pushed apart again, or whatever.
yeah,
So this works kind of regardless.
awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, this is one aspect. There are many other subsystems of the big music system, right? But I thought that was interesting and something that we decided to do it like this because of those requirements from music design, right? Which I think I mean, it's it has. I'm pretty happy with it. It has been pretty robust. So yeah. So let's see.
Yeah, I ended up putting some of this text in here so I can kind of talk through some of these things.
Oh, got it. So you
Um,
go ahead.
yeah, you know, like basically like to get good coverage of ambience, we basically took a couple of simple approaches, and then we could build those out with detail when we could find things that we could hang more certainty on, basically. So we start by having like a ambient bed for each zone or each biome, right? You could do a raycast down, be like, where am I? And your switch container blend, you know, like blend between them. That's fine. We also have had some subzones in areas, so it's like we know that there's likely to be more trees here. We don't know how many trees there are, but like, okay, I know this is like an area where like the procedural generation is going to spawn a lot of trees. So maybe we got within the blend container, that's, you know, a blend container that's got like a thing that's got more tree sounds or something. So we've got a good bed with no directionality, and we made a ambisonics, so it's nice. You rotate your head and it kind of like spins around you. It feels enveloping. We can also make that react to weather intensity. So if it starts raining, and then we did the shoreline, because there's this ocean, and so we know we can get the distance to the shoreline and the direction to it, and so Christian Sparks, a technical designer, made a system that just moves a game object that we can attach sound to. So cool. Like if I'm in the forest and there's ocean over there, and I turn around, like it sounds like the ocean, the ocean's like moving, you know, and I mean, like I know which direction it is. It gives me some directionality. And let's see,
Yeah,
then
like
we
follow it
did
to the water.
yeah.
Like, okay, I need to get there. I'll just listen
Yep.
and
Yep.
guide
Yep.
myself.
Exactly. Like if you're being attacked by enemies or something,
Yeah.
and you're like, I don't want to run into another group of enemies. I want to, you know, get to the shoreline where I can.
Flee.
Yeah.
And does that have some idea
Mhm.
of distance and spread once you approach
Yep.
the edge of it?
Yeah. I mean, the
Great.
nice
Yeah.
thing, and the nice thing is, like, because we are just moving an object around, we could just use all the native.
Yeah, it's all
native
like just
tools.
using the parameters in Wise for attenuators, you know, just
Yeah, I love it.
yeah.
And then we also did so like, okay, now we've got a good bed. We know we can hear the ocean. So we're like, location good, right? Now we want to add a little bit of life to it. So we said, well, what if we have wind gusts, and these wind gusts would just be in a random container with a random delay, and so you get random wind gusts, and these random wind gusts, we can put them on a random path, so it sounds like it's kind of blowing past you. And then we thought, well, what if you throw it? This was a fun one too, that like I swear took 10 minutes to implement. Like we were having a meeting, and then like this idea came up, we implemented it, and it worked. Pop a meter on the output of those wind gusts, and then you can get the RTPC from it, and then you can drive up the volume of other ambience.
Yeah.
So wind gust comes along, you can make all the trees shake, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's amazing. Wait, you just said
Mhm.
trees shake. So you're bringing
Well,
We're working on that. We're working on that.
Oh, okay. But
It's not quite sound wise. It does, but
we
we've talked to
could.
Tech Art about. We actually have talked to them about like wanting to drive animation with the audio stuff.
Yeah,
So-
and this is a key one.
Okay.
But it's
But I
early
know-
access, so don't hold us to it yet. We're working.
Yeah, I
on
mean,
it.
there's stuff that I see like in you know, our work planner that kind of gets backlogged. There's like people working on important stuff, right? It's like I got to do these boss effects and stuff, and then you know, it's like, but you talk to Fran, our VFX guy, and he's like, they want to have like ripples in the grass, and you know, and then much like our concerns as a sound designer, like you don't want those ripples all the time, and so
right,
you know, maybe we can drive that from the sound, and they go together.
And it is back to game parameters, something we talked about up front. It is just a value that's sent back to the game from Wwise from this meter of the wind gust that you would hand off to VFX, animation, otherwise, in order to drive a parameter in another system. It's not just that easy, but
Yeah, it's
It is for us though. I don't care what they have to do.
But it's
not our
something to explore, like we
yeah,
yeah, it's wishful thinking. It's kind of like
it might be, yeah.
taking some of the control from them, right? But it's an interesting anyway. Yeah, for sure.
because again, it comes back to that synchronicity piece where you say, oh, well, we don't just want this to happen randomly out of sync with what audio is doing. And so I find when you can pull that synchronicity between visuals and audios bidirectionally, you're doing great.
Yeah. I mean, I think like if I can make a philosophical point is you work in games and you realize like game worlds don't exist. It's like it is just a lot of data, and but you want to sell people on it, right? And the like better games have like clearer presentation. You really want to sell that world, and the more you're like, if you're sloppy or divergent, then like that's when games don't feel tight. They don't feel as good, so it's always a challenge because you can always do more.
That's true.
So speaking of doing more, and on this topic of ambience, all the things that I've talked about are either kind of random or kind of broad, but don't have much specificity. And so I'll let Horacio take it away with what we've done with multi-position audio.
Yeah. So again, when I joined the team, the idea and kind of like the use of this tech was already kind of like sort of like in place. I mean, there were some things that needed to polish and fix and profile and stuff, but kind of like the idea itself was there, and it was an interesting surprise. So so we implemented we used the multi-position tech from and it has been great so far, and it's gonna be great in the future because we haven't used it like in its full potential. So I think I have another video demonstrating that, if you mind.
Great. I'm going to cue that
Damien.
up and spin it right now.
Hi, this is Horacio Valdivieso, tech audio designer at Heart Machine. In this video, I want to show you how we used Wwise multi-position technology to populate the world with ambient sound emitters in the procedurally generated world of Hyperlight Breaker. Please have in mind that our game is in early access, so these systems might change throughout development until its final release. I am in the Audiokinetics Wwise authoring tool, and I have several ambient audio events placed in this Soundcaster. These events are meant to decorate the world with foliage and fauna sounds. Let's listen. Wind and wood crackling. Insects. Birds, wind, and foliage. As I mentioned before, the world is generated procedurally, so the challenge is that we can't anticipate where all these sounds should be placed. Also, if we could know, it would be very laborious to hand place these emitters and very taxing in terms of runtime performance. The solution was a combined effort between our technical art and audio departments. We created a data table where audio designers linked different static meshes like trees, bushes, and general foliage with Wwise audio events. To achieve the precision that we needed, we placed this socket on every relevant mesh. This way, we could define the exact local position where the emitter should be placed. Then, during runtime, and after the world is ready and decked, our custom audio manager ingests this data and places a multi-position audio emitter on every found instance of these meshes. Here I am in the Hyperlight Breakers Overgrowth. I also have Wise's Game Object 3D Viewer and the Performance Monitor. Let's mute everything but the ambient so we can focus on that. Notice how the audio engine dynamically brings these voices from virtual to physical as soon as the player character is within the attenuation radius of these emitters. Additionally, we are showing the exact position of these emitters using debug spheres, which also tells us the audio component the emitter is assigned to and which Wwise event is using. Note that despite having thousands of emitter positions, our CPU audio thread never goes above 10%. Additionally, our physical voice count for this system is below 20. We expect these numbers to change throughout development, but we are happy to know that we can easily accommodate a world multiple times as big.
Like, wow. My heart exploded when I saw that Game Object 3D Viewer populate with emitters. That was so cool to see those toggle on, and the fact that you're in there measuring CPU, being a good steward for resources across the game, like, that's all just heartwarming stuff. Not to mention the incredible ambient sound design itself, like the way it reinforced the world. I'm just absolutely dying. It's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the solution. It, it's
Yeah.
great. It's a challenge. It's a procedurally generated game, and again, even if it wasn't, we would need like a team, I don't know, 5, 10 times the size to be able to actually handcraft all of these ambient systems. As I think as we wrote here in the slide, right? I mean, happy sound designers, happy engineers, because if you don't know how the multi-position system works, is that it's using just one voice, or if it's stereo, it's two voices, right? In this case, but kind of like emitting in several locations, right? And so for some things you might not like that, you might not want that, but for some like sort of like semi-specialized, sparse, audio decoration, let's say, audio presentation of the ambient, it's fine. I mean, it's totally great, right, for that.
Yeah.
And so, you see that we have like thousands, or well, hundreds, and potentially thousands of different positions, but we actually have like, I don't know, maybe 5, 10 voices active, and that's totally acceptable. And it's good enough for, to make the point across, right? And so, yeah, so, that's great. I encourage people to dig into this system and use it and try to explore creative ways on how they can use that. So
Yeah, and is
Yeah, I
there an
think
example of maybe when you wouldn't leverage a multi-positioned emitter? Maybe something that requires a level of positional precision, I guess.
the hub is basically like a purely traditional, normal. Everything about that is very much like hand placed, handcrafted, and
it's a
it's actually
mix.
a really, yeah, it's actually like a really fun. Yeah, actually, the foliage is actually using the system in the hub, but all of the like details of the hub, like air conditioners and neon signs and all that kind of stuff, because that's a world that doesn't change, right? So that's where we get to really like lean into pushing our aesthetic. Um, but I think our goal was basically actually to get the hub sounding like we thought it should, and then get the open world to sound as good, basically, and as detailed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't quite yet because we're in early access, and so we just haven't had the time to do all the content yet. But it's actually like, to me, not a huge shift. Like you don't play the hub and go, "Wow, it's so rich," and then get into the world and go, "Oh, it's so boring." It's basically uh, our goal is to match that same level. And I mean, I'm someone that basically thinks um, if you can get away with it, you should always do it. And so, in terms of like directionality and stuff, I think it's especially in a game like this where there's action and there you can move really quickly. No one is there like getting the camera right in and, oh, that's not coming completely. That cricket is over there. I think it totally works
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
what it needs to
Yeah.
be. But yeah, this system, just for your benefit, Damien, is this system is actually again something that we sort of started in Solar Ash, and we built all of it completely from scratch because we were doing native Unreal.
Yeah.
And so we did the whole system of generating all the vertices, and then an input system where we like built this crazy thing. Rich Disaster Beast did this, where it was like all these nodes and all this crazy stuff, and and it worked basically the same. But when we got here, Alex Johnson was like, "We have this multi-positional audio thing. I wonder, like, would that be of any use?" And we're like, "Oh my God, it's literally the exact system that we built. It's
Took the
just
same
we
input.
just do, yeah."
So we
So it
already
was like
knew
we
what to do.
already we had, and the engineering lead um, on for both projects was famously said like, always was kind of turning us down. No, we don't have room for that feature. We don't have room for that feature. And at one point he was like, "Oh, if you're just talking about like getting a position, just like an array of vertices, and you just want to get a position, you can do that. I mean, we could do a million of those." And it was like, all right, everything has to be with audio verts. Like we need to just make every system about vertices. And it really has been pretty amazing how seamlessly that transition has happened, and how much like what Horacio was saying. It's like you can just put stuff in there. It doesn't, if we add another like 500 vertices, it doesn't do anything to the performance. It doesn't like, we're not running up against like, oh my God, we have like 20,000 objects in this procedural world. And if they add one more object type, we're screwed. Like
Yeah.
it's totally the sky's the limit. We had to do
Yeah, I
some
remember
interesting stuff to make it work, but
they expanded the landmass about 30% and
yeah.
and
And then
hadn't quite
also
refined
like
the system
triple the
yet, and we did
density
have
of,
yeah.
they're like, hey,
Yeah.
you guys are placing a lot of things on this grass. Like, can we look at this? And we go, wait a minute, this grass used to be like 10 clumps of grass every like mile. And now
Oh,
it's just the
but then
world
it
is
was
full of
yeah.
grass. You're like, that's on you guys for doing this. But it actually, once we kind of realized what was going on there and that we couldn't control what the artists were doing, we built this system where like, okay, we're going to just spawn as many components as we need. However many verts go in, we just create more components. And I think at this point, there's still, it seems like occasionally we'll get some bugs where stuff is missing or there's some kind of issues, but for the most part, it's totally stable and totally performant. Like we're not butting up against any kind of limitations, basically. So it honestly, I sort of, I've kind of I always forget to mention that I also did all the point source sound design and the overgrowth, and me and Alex Johnson did kind of split up the ambiences otherwise. But that stuff, like that process is so amazing to just get, make something, put it in the game. All the verts, are being assigned, like we assign them on the meshes, and then it just exists. Like you play the game and it actually comes out of the things, and it's a procedural game, so you just kind of don't expect it to work. Even like in editor, you kind of think, do we have to bake something or do something at some stage to like get this to react? But it totally has.
Yeah.
It's just worked. I mean, I feel like it's one of the most successful systems because we've had this sort of trajectory over the last, we've probably been working on something like this for 5 years at the studio, and so all that institutional knowledge is there to just say, oh, totally, we're just doing that, great.
Yeah.
And then Wwise is kind of already there to interpret that data. So now at least the engineers don't have to think about it. And then when Horacio joined, he was able to really like kind of finesse it and massage it. So it's in a really good place already, and I'm excited to have the time to add more details to all the like little things that are kind of adds over time because there's so many enviro artists and there's only us on the audio team, so it's not easy to keep up with everything they're doing. But with this, all we have to do is the sound.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about finding tons of little plants in all these different levels and all that crazy stuff. It's just
Yep.
Yeah, well, that was key for us, like as a small team, we it's kind of amazing watching Horacio's video and seeing all the debug stuff pop up and thinking like, we wouldn't have time to build all these tools, right? So this is like, it's nice that out of the box we have all this functionality. I mean, with work, but like it's there, and we're like it looks like debug visuals from a AAA game 10 years ago, and
Sure.
And as Troupe is saying, like we're able to focus on the creative end of it.
Yep.
And because we do have enough people to do that. So
yep. And that's where this feature comes from, right? Multi-positioned emitters in Wwise is driven by developers like you who are working with these, scaling worlds, looking for the solution to being able to get the technology out of the way, put the intention behind the authoring, and stay performant and stay scalable and dynamic in a way that supports the world. And so it's, again, great to see you leveraging it and to hear that it found its place as an iteration in the development of the studio over time.
And there's really cool, there's amazing stuff you can do with that information where if you've got all those verts and you're feeding it in to drive the trees, you can say, well, let's take that and actually, what should we do with music here? Like, should we have layers that are more organic when you're in the forest, you're like around more foliage? Like, should we drive the bass ambience in different ways? There's a lot of stuff, once you start getting all that data into the world and into Wwise, then suddenly like these other possibilities open up. And I think that's the stuff that I'm really excited for as we get forward. We sort of have all these systems. We've talked about how the combat intensity kind of works its way into all the different kind of aspects of audio, but I think a lot of this environmental stuff can do the same. We can actually reinforce like the mix, make changes to the mix based on your surroundings, make changes to the music based on your surroundings.
Yeah.
So I really love this whole approach to getting data for game audio. It's like a really powerful, it just feels like that's the stuff that really changes the mood and changes the vibe, and given the size of our team, it's like incredible that we could react to that stuff. It's basically just on us to create the content for it,
Beautiful. And it's only early access. So
just imagine.
Got some time. All right.
Yeah. So kind of like to answer your question, Damien, about like when would you recommend to use it or not? So if something needs like a very accurate spatialization, especially if you're using audio objects, and you want like very defined placement, I wouldn't use this. And also if something moves, I wouldn't use this because this assumes that the locations are static, right? So you feed to the component an array of transforms, and that's it, right? So, but yeah, no, it has been great for solving that issue. And so, really quick, just in this slide, I'm talking about, the decker, which is like a tech, a class that we have that pretty much is the class that decorates the environment, right? And so that talks to our world audio manager, that's how we call it, and says, it's ready for you. And so the audio manager ingests this data table, right? This data asset or data table, and finds kind of like in a background thread while the game is loading or transitioning to this world, finds all of these meshes and spawns audio components and with the correct placement. And I don't know if you can see, but there's like a one field that says grid resolution. That's to handle grass, for instance, right? I mean, we don't want that every piece of grass has one object, so it's sort of like to manage kind of like how sparse, how dense, right? And we found actually that, each component can handle like something like 1,500 positions. So, we set that limit, and actually we found actually that if you move that limit down, you can also generate, well, more variety, less variety, because, you will have more voices sounding. So maybe, the first sound on the array, on the switch container, maybe the next one will play the second one, etc. Right? So yeah, cool stuff.
Amazing. Yeah. That's the dynamic control or control over the amount of variations, again, adding to the liveliness. And when I think about it, I think about, historically, kind of the way that Alex described it as a background bed using ambisonics format, and then positional point sources. This is, I think, traditionally how we approach ambient design. And to me, this adds a kind of magic middle layer where this multi-positioned emitter, again, doesn't have the same level of precision as a point source with a defined discrete position, but it's also not as diffuse and abstracted as the background or ambisonics. So it's this hybrid in the middle between that color setting background and the sharp positioning point source, giving you a little bit more abstraction, but still with directionality and some level of detail.
Your brain definitely fills in the gaps, I think.
I would I would point out that if you think back to all the stuff that we've talked about with Ambience, we have 0 things placed in the world.
Yeah.
Right. All of this it's completely data driven.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's not even things we could conceivably, we have like POIs that we call, these sort of set piece like buildings or structures that obviously the game isn't like 100% completely procedural. It's not voxel or whatever. So we could conceivably place emitters in these kind of fixed things. It's honestly just easier to let the artist use whatever they do, and then those just get swept up by the audio vert system. So we haven't actually found a use case yet where we're like, oh, this is a special thing. We want to place a point source. It's so special. Even the special stuff just gets ingested into this system, and it's worked really well. So yeah, there's basically nothing ambient as soon as you load into like a run.
Yeah.
There's nothing ambient that's placed because that world is generated at runtime, and we can't. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I had this baby who maybe people have heard crying in the background. I'm currently in his room, keeping him awake because it's almost 9 o'clock in Portugal, and so I have to take off. I'm so sorry. I wish I could have done it longer. We were supposed to move last week, but it got pushed. So I have to leave it in the capable hands of Alex and Horacio to talk about the things that I wasn't even really that involved with anyway. So, I mean, no one wants to hear my opinions. But
Like that.
I hope Joel will stick around for the Q&A if there's any music questions in the chat. And thanks, Damien, for this. It's been awesome.
Troupe, great to have your perspective today. You're pulling off some really cool tricks and it's sounding great. So thanks a bunch. Good luck on the move. Get some rest and we'll see you next time.
I will.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Have fun, y'all.
Take care.
See ya.
All right. Well, let's keep rolling. It looks like you've got us queued up for the next video. Am I right?
Yeah, we're gonna shift from talking about ambient and music and start to talk about some specific stuff in the mix. And this actually shouldn't take too long. It's a pretty specific topic, and then we'll roll through and get to the Q&A.
We're having a good time, and I'm going to spin this video. We'll keep it going.
Hi, this is Alex Johnson, audio lead at Heart Machine. I'd like to walk you through what we did to build a flexible Wwise structure for Hyperlight Breaker. We can think of the audio mix for any game as though it is a machine. When you chuck a sound into the machine, you expect it to fold into the mix appropriately. It's our job as audio designers to set up the machine so that it makes tasteful decisions in any situation. In our game, Hyperlight Breaker, the game world is randomized each time you play, so we should consider that any combination of characters may exist in any location. Our sounds need to be modular so we can throw a whole character or game event into the mix and trust that it will work. Hyperlight Breaker is also in early access, which means some things may get shuffled around and new game objects are continually being added to the game. We need to start by organizing sounds where they're born, the actor mixer hierarchy. If we look at the enemy section, we can see that each character has all of their sounds grouped together. This makes it easy to add additional characters later in development. However, when a new character starts chucking sounds into our machine, we need those sounds to play nice. If we add a projectile into the game, we expect it to behave like other similar projectiles. In Hyperlight Breaker, we want projectiles to be louder and pitched up when they're coming towards you. This helps keep the mix clean by turning down projectiles that have no chance of hitting you, and gives us a nice Doppler effect to boot. The Wwise structure will allow objects to inherit from their parent, so potentially we could collect all the projectiles in one location, but that would make it pretty difficult to work on a single character. So in Hyperlight Breaker, we have a tag-like naming scheme for our actor mixers, allowing you to find similar objects no matter where they are in the project. And we have a ground rule that actor mixers should not be nested inside other actor mixers, which means when you set those properties, you know what you're going to get. This organization may seem pretty bare bones, but it has very few moving pieces. We went through a few other structures before settling on this one. By establishing a clear division of responsibility, we've got a manageable system that is easy to extend.
Extensibility is the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is going to be, sorry for getting a little fundamental there at the beginning, but I want to start there because I think that it's if you're building a simple system, or if you're building a flexible system, it's important to have it be. If you want flexibility, you need it to be simple. If you want it to be simple, you have to know, you have to be specific about like what am I trying to achieve with everything that I'm doing here, so that you can just do fewer things and you can do them in fewer places, and then you can take things and move them around and it'll be interoperable, right? So I think a really key thing for us to point out here is that we got this rule. We say no actor mixers inside of other actor mixers. The structure is a tree. So, this like attack medium close range melee mob is not inheriting from anything. All the stuff above it is just organization, does not carry properties at all. And then all of the stuff that's inside of it are like random containers, blend containers, this kind of thing that then contain sounds. So we know, simple system, we know we got our sound. The sound is contained inside of an audio container, so it's in a random container, and then it's inside an actor mixer, and that's it for all of our sounds. So we could be very clear about what kind of thing are we doing on the sound source? What's the responsibility of the audio kit here? What's the responsibility of the actor mixer? So
that's great. And
in
like
our
you
case,
said, it's
yeah.
got that tag-based naming system so you can navigate through your project. And with the Project Explorer filter, you can, focus in the Project Explorer on a subset of sounds based on that naming tag or naming standard that you can rely on. And yes, sounds like a great way to work.
Yeah, I think there's a good way, like if I have more time, like I think there are interesting ways to demonstrate this.
Yeah.
Because I set up queries. We've got a function, a Python script that Horacio made where you can right click on something and say find similarly named objects.
Yeah.
And it'll just pop them out in the list view. So I could right click on like this attack medium close range melee mob. I could right click on that,
Yep.
hit the script, and then like here's like the other 10 of them. And then I can start removing words from it. I can remove like mob, I can remove melee and mob. So I can get all my attack, medium, close range, and like, what are the common properties that I want to have there, right? So, since we know like our common properties are, we've got attenuation. Attenuation, we're going to set on actor mixers. If we want different attenuation for something, that's a new class of an actor mixer that we want to create. And maybe it's only got 3 things in it, but it's like a very specific, like long range attack, long range AoE or something like that. So you can then still have it have all of the things that are in common with it that kind of come with those other base tags, right? All the long range stuff may have certain behaviors.
This is something that sorry if I interrupt,
please.
This is something that I totally encourage everyone. Maybe they are starting on this in game development, create rules for how your stuff are going to be, create frameworks, right, for your projects. And this might not be kind of fun at the beginning. It might feel restrictive, but your future self will thank you for that. Because if you have a framework this what AJ created, we are going to name things like this, and we are not going to have any actor mixer hierarchies, like nested hierarchies, then you can create tools that follow those that schema and that framework that will make your life easier and find things easier, right? And it won't work if everything is different. And but anyway, that's my kind of like tip about that. So
yeah, and when we were starting out on the game and like the project was smaller, the initial idea that I had was like, hey, we got all these projectiles. I have 4 of them. I'm going to put them in an actor mixer together. And then they're all going to behave the same. Done, right? Like that is the place where that's the fewest moving pieces. Like in a certain sense, like that is the simplest way to do it. But then once we got to like 20 characters or something, and you'd get a note like, hey, turn this character down. And okay, but I got like not only are there sounds all over the place. I don't have a map. Like I have to search, like you're searching for stuff and you're just to look at a character. When it's like this, I can have, here's like this croc root character, and all the sounds for the croc root are there. If I add a new character, I don't have to check out any other work unit. I don't have to do anything else to anything else. I just I make the new character, and then I saved all these things as like templates too. So I just like start popping in the things that I need, and then drop the sounds in them, have the right behavior. I'm good to go.
Yeah, and if I look at this hierarchy, you've got your point of use, right, which is in this example, enemy character. That's your specificity, and we know that there's a higher level of control that you have in the mixer hierarchy to be able to control groups of sounds as well. So you have that you're relying on as well, where maybe you have different submixes for different higher level knobs that you want to turn for volumes or filters or effects and otherwise. But yeah, bringing it down to the point of use, giving it that specificity, being able to mix the aspects of a single character within context for themselves across all of the different pieces of that you've pointed out here. I think that seems like it's serving you really well and something you iterated towards in the right way.
Yeah, we really did try a lot of different things. And Horacio's right. He came in and really drilled into me the concept of the separation of concerns. So much so that I have it like in here in a slide coming up. But that's I mean it's it's the it's programming idea that you think about like what is this thing responsible for? And now I know if I want to do that thing, I do it here, right? So we tried to think of like, if there's a place where like, hey, doing it in this place kind of accommodates all of our different situations, then that's the place that we're going to do it. And so if I kind of run through what we have here, we've got our sound sources. What's the responsibility? Loudness. So we have a normalization tool, again, that Horacio made, a Python script, so you can set a target loudness, which I know is now built into Wwise, and we did it because we saw that, and our loudness was kind of all over the place, and I mean, like over years of development and trying to get ready for early access. Around Game SoundCon was when we got this tool built. So this was like when we were mixing to release in January. So yeah, so all the sounds are already at the right level. You generally do not need to touch faders anywhere else in the project. They're already in the right spot for like what kind of loudness they are. We have a loudness sheet. All the explosions are a certain volume. It's all good to go.
Yeah.
So
it throws me back to a live stream we did with the Helldivers 2 folks, and they put their loudness categorization, and
we ripped off that sheet.
Well, like it's a masterclass. If you throw it back to the live stream that we did last year, of course, they were dropping science, and thankful for our ability to point to that and say, oh, well, here, do that.
Yeah, that came out while we were in the middle of mixing, and so we were able to we really like that, and the simplicity of attenuators.
Yeah. Great.
And when I was at Game SoundCon, I went up to with people that I knew. I was like grilling them like how do you have your attenuators set up?
Yeah.
And I didn't include this in our presentation, but our attenuators are very simple. Like they all follow, like except for special cases like explosions, or some voice stuff or something. We just have like a curve that sounds good. It's got a flat spot at the top, 500 units, which is sort of the sphere of inclusion. So if I'm within 500 units of something, I kind of want to be enveloped by it because it's a 3D action game. Then we just have that at like a bunch of different distances. So all of these actor mixers, if you were to look at their attenuators, their attenuators are like, it's like spread or no spread, 8,000 units. And so everything, because that is all we really care about from the attenuator.
And you're going to love this because in the most recent version, 24.1, we added a property for a sound called scaling distance percentage. So now instead of duplicating the curve that you love for different max distances, you can just author that as a property and scale that curve in the right way. So I'm hyped for your future. I lost everyone over in our camera tool somehow magically. So
you know what? I can still see Horacio, I think.
Yeah, I think we lost you.
Well, we'll call this the 2-hour recalibrate, and I will, yeah, we'll take a pause. Great. We'll keep the audio alive, and I'm going to reload my control room to see if I can get you back.
All right. Do it. Is the slide still up?
I've got full screen on my camera right now, and I'm going to get back into that camera room as well. If y'all could refresh that page, we will get this back up and running, I hope.
Camera.
Okay, cool. Something is coming back
It's not
online. Thanks for
visible.
your patience. All right, and we're almost back. Just giving this 2 more shakes of the tail, and thanks for your patience. Let's see if we can. Perfect. Welcome back. Okay, that was a good fire drill. I enjoyed it, and folks are still with us. Let's jump back in. Presentation is back up.
We can make adjustments if we want to, but we're good. We look at the actor mixer. I'll kind of jump down here because this does most of the heavy lifting. The actor mixer sets the definitions for behavior for sounds. It's stuff that we don't want to set over and over and over again. We want to duplicate it. So this stuff, we're fine just like smashing, like bulldozing whatever properties are on other copies of this actor mixer if we want to. This stuff's all common. It's all clean. So spatialization, the conversion settings, priority, these things are all taken care of there. And this leaves the audio container to be actually a space where we have a lot of creative freedom. If your audio files are normalized and you're in the right actor mixer, then you can use any container, you can swap, you can move containers between places, and everything's going to behave appropriately. It's very simple, and you don't have to work on it. There isn't like weird like network tendrils going up and down and in and out of this stuff that really cause problems.
And that really allows you to share content across other characters. If you wanted to throw a layer at someone else's ability, attack, or otherwise, you could drop it into a like container and have it just fall in place, pre-mixed and sounding great.
Yeah, exactly. So it works very good for like stub sounds. This also, by having all this stuff, all the behavior kind of like preset like this, makes it very easy to implement new sounds. So if we add a character, we can grab all the templates, drop the sounds in, normalize them based on the sheet, and like it's good to go. Like it'll fit. It'll do good when it gets eaten by the machine, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that all these core elements, like, how loud things are, or the naming conventions, etc., are just sort of like ways of making sure that because the projects can get so big and out of control that you at some point you just have to trust that something will work, right? And so if you ensure that you have all of these rules that you put or this framework, right, then you can move on with trusting that, if I push up a fader or down a fader, it's not going to, destroy the mix or the system, right?
Totally.
So, so kind of like, that I guess that was kind of like an effort that we had to make really quick because, suddenly we had to ship early access. And so we came up with all of these solutions just to be able to, and I think it has been great. And I'm happy that we embraced some of these design ideas.
Yeah, because if you take care of this core stuff here, then like you do have that creative freedom. Like if you want RTPCs to be controlling stuff, they're controlling something that's already simplified. And since let's see now, and we should actually just let's jump into our mix structure, because once we've got this stuff set up, we kick it up to our mix buses. And I know this might be a little hard to see, but we have mix buses for each character. So the character has got like and these are, we have like all the attack actions grouped together. We don't care about how loud or how large or small or long range or anything like that. We don't care about any of that anymore because we've already taken care of it. Like it's already that responsibility is taken care of. That's under the purview of the actor mixer. All that stuff is done. Here we've got pre-mixed action sounds, pre-mixed attack sounds, pre-mixed impacts. And the only reason why we would categorize them in this way is because maybe we want to control groups of them with RTPCs. And rather than have those RTPCs live in a million places in the actor mixer hierarchy, this stuff was all over the place at different times, at different points in development. And then it was like, okay, look, we got this priority system. We want to turn character footsteps up and down. Let's just please like do it in the mix. Like we'll put all the footsteps, all the Foley here, and we can do it there. Great. It's all in one place. And if we want to duck it, we do it all in one place. And we can see where we can visualize all of our ducking, all that stuff that we're doing, all in that one spot.
Totally.
I mean, that's another big, I think, as I talk about this more, it's a big benefit of that separation of concerns is that you are collecting them when there is a variety, when there is a lot of it.
Yeah.
A lot of activity.
Well, it's different granularity of controls and the reliability of knowing where to reach for the knob when you want to do something. Right.
Yes, and that is a very good point because that is, you think about, even if you were not a sound designer, what is the conversation that you have with somebody when they say like, I want you to, like, we should turn this character down.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, so what? Am I going to go to, like, I got to hunt down all their things and I got to do that. Or they say like, I'm having trouble hearing gunshots. They should be, I should hear them from a greater distance. Like, okay, let me replace the attenuators on all of them. And I don't have to like go and like move the attenuator. It's affecting other things. It's like, I'm going to grab a different attenuator and slap it on there, But going into these mix buses, like this is like, we do have small adjustments on here. In fact, this one that I grabbed in the example is like pulled down -2 for the attack of this Dirk rifle character.
Yeah.
Everything was already pre-mixed. It was already kind of in the right spot. And, I could go back and renormalize those files like 2 dB quieter and not have any adjustment here. But this is honestly why we have it grouped this way.
Yeah.
It's already generally in the right spot. And I want to be able to like make these changes and go back and change them again and do it in this clean spot. So it's not all over the place. So we do grab this fader and make these adjustments, but we do not do that on the actor mixer. That is not the actor mixer's job. The actor mixer does not touch volume.
Right.
Yeah, it's like it's like having like, a nice icing on the cake. It's just to the -2 there, right? So it means that it's right. The kind of like the gang structure, the loudness has been is well achieved, is well developed. So what the problem is when I see like +10 and then -24 in another one, then I know that something is wrong, right? That something from the core needs to be addressed. And so yeah, totally.
Yeah, so if we let's kind of go through this. So I've got I've got it laid out here, and this is what we're talking about is just the mix bus. So we
Yeah.
have the stuff that came from the actor mixer. We have, oh, this actually should say master, sorry.
Yeah.
This, let's see. So again, we have a structure we rely on, and we have like tag-based naming that we can rely on. And so we can batch change all of the impacts or explosions, because we don't want to mix to like, hey, put all the explosions in one spot, because now what if you want to make our adjustment, we want to turn down something for a character? What if we want a certain character to, like, we want something to be ducking in a certain way? Like we want to control this stuff from a character standpoint, and we also want to be able to add additional characters later, and not step on the toes of the work that we've already done. So we don't want to be like, when we add a character, we don't want to be like filtering stuff into a bunch of different places.
Yeah.
We want to grab a work unit and pop, it's there.
Yep.
Um,
And then point those actor mixers at the right place in the
Mhm.
mixer in order to
Mhm.
have those higher level controls.
Yeah. When I was
Nice.
saying we like obliterate the stuff on the actor mixers, that's the one thing that is unique, is that they have to go to the attack bus for that character. Right?
Totally.
Great.
Great.
So the next thing that we'll talk about, I've actually got another video.
Question about, do you want
Yes.
to take a pause and answer some questions from the chat before we jump into this final section?
Oh, if there are questions that are, aimed at this, like, happily.
I've been holding back a bit just to
Sure.
let this happen, but let's carry some questions from the chat for folks who have been sticking around. Question coming in about, sounds, and the system giving a lot of flexibility. How much is that adapting to the gameplay changes that are happening as the game is, constantly aligning during early access? So
Yeah, I mean, there's some things you can adapt to and some things that you can't. Like, you have a character that shoots a projectile, and then now they're shooting a laser.
right.
It's got to be something else. But we try to think of all of our solutions as like, how do we handle lasers and how do we handle projectiles? And so we have, like, on the one hand, you have like systems and like solutions that are figured out that you can then like apply, and then you have sounds that you can apply. And we do find that, like, when you lose when a sound becomes no longer accurate, you can save it and use it for something else. So we've done that. I think we also have we have things that sort of have scaled in importance.
Yeah.
And so you would say we've got here's a sound that, it used to be like a small thing, and now it's a bigger, more important thing. Or here's an ability the player used to be able to do a lot, and now they can only do a few times. And so you want to make that bigger, and then you might have to design for that. But
but sometimes it's just taking in that new gameplay information and applying it in the project at places.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's I think having the adaptable priority system is a big help, because we can just choose like when and how we want to apply it. We do have other stuff that sort of comes and goes, like the way the hoverboard control changed, and we had to go and like tweak the way that we set those RTPCs and stuff like that.
Nice. All right. Thanks for the question from the chat. How much of that ambient system, the reactive, multi-positioned system, is currently in the early access. Where should people be listening to it, or how? Give an example of how someone might, put their ear on it and actually hear it in action. A certain kind of ambient fauna, bird, or insect that they might be able to identify and get a feel for
Yeah.
how that system is working.
So that's a system we're growing over time by adding fidelity, by like adding unique assets. And so you can start by slapping a like bush sound on everything, you know? And I feel like we've actually got some pretty good specificity now, but if you look around and look for bushes and trees and stuff,
Well,
you should,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna tell you exactly how you should,
okay.
how you would be able to hear it. First of all, find a very densely populated area with, bushes, trees. Then you have to kill all the enemies because all the enemies are pushing down the ambience because those are more important, right? So I have to kill all the enemies around, have like a peaceful, non-battle moment, and then just rotate your camera around these bushes. So yeah, that's how you can experience that.
Perfect. Perfect. Great suggestion. And thanks for the question from the chat. This one will dig back into music systems a bit. How easy is it to stand up a new series of musics for a new biome, for instance? The way it was explained, it kind of sounded like it was like Lego blocks were in place and you just had to drop the new content in and it's magic. So how easy is that at this phase?
I think on the technical side, yeah, it's like you've got the biome. So
Should
if we had like a new biome or something, you could just add that as a identifier, right?
Yeah, so okay, let's say that we, designers added a new biome, right? And so that biome will have like a unique identifier, right? We use gameplay tags in our system, right? And so we will create a new music package, right? What we showed, that will contain all the events, after the music is composed and implemented in Wwise, right? Then we create a new data asset with this new biome definition, and then we'll add it to an array that is held by our music, our music manager, or the conductor, let's say.
Yeah.
And so as soon as the player character, the local character, overlaps or is in the biome, the music manager will know, oh, okay, so what is the gameplay tag of this biome? Okay, so I should stop whatever I'm playing now and start playing this new thing with these rules that we provided there.
Great.
So yeah.
It's all there to toggle on a new biome whenever that might happen.
I think like the important thing there is that Horacio is identifying is that we wouldn't have to like change anything in the system. We just have to set up a new thing to throw into it, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we wouldn't have to touch any code, just come up with like our
Just
data
create more
asset
data.
that's just got a bit of that just says like, oh, how long are the fades and what are the like Wwise events that are involved.
Excellent. I'm pulling another one from the chat. It's a bit of a beginner's question about adaptive music. Do you have any best practices for maintaining musical coherence while still allowing for variability? I think I'm actually going to pull from Joel's response to this comment in the chat and say, I think what Joel is saying is I think the key is keeping phrases short, intentional, using space, and then combining them in interesting ways, but being careful not to get too dense with layers. he had another comment a little earlier that I really loved, where he invoked the word noodles, but it was on a different question. Go back
No, I can.
into the chat and read through Joel's comments. He has some great things to say about the music. And yeah,
Yeah,
please take a
yeah, I can. There's a you can it, when you play a sound and then you want to stop it, you can also you kind of have the option to like release it, which means if you have a 10-second looping sound
yeah.
and you're 7 seconds into it or something, you can stop it, or you can say release and it'll do the last 3 seconds and then stop. So since we've got like all these ambient threads, and some of them, they may be like 7 seconds long or something like that. We do that, and this is actually like can make it sound pretty awesome. Or I don't know if we do that currently. I actually haven't looked that closely at that part of the music system, but I know we've done that before. So if you're triggering something and then stopping it, or if you're because we were like, the system is going to be interrupted. Like that was a thing that we know this system is going to be interrupted. How can we make it sound good when it's interrupted? It's like, well, release it, and like that stuff will all kind of like blend in and in different ways, in a unique way that you only hear that one time, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think what AJ is describing is that so because our music is it's sort of like it's a sound effect, like one of the layers is a sound effect, right? So you can apply certain actions, right? So you have the play action, the stop action, etc. There's one action that's called break, right?
That's what it is.
Which is
Yeah.
which is so what it does is whatever sound is playing on a random container, right? As soon as you call that, it will stop the object, but it will let the tail of that sound to end, right? So it's like, okay, don't play more iterations, but I want you to end, right? Like gracefully. And so we use that, um, um, because our music system is sort of like sound effect. It's a sound effect in a way, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's neat when it happens on like 3 music layers that are happening and they all end at different times, and you've already begun to crossfade something else in. I think once you've got this stuff going, you can start to find like just what are little places where I can solve little problems, or just sort of like increment the perceived quality just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've oh,
Great.
sorry.
Dig
Any
in.
more
Yeah.
question?
Nope. Head in.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay, cool. So we have talked about our actor mixers. We have talked about our mix bus structure. And the final piece of this, so there's a third part, and there's a video for this one, is how we handle sidechaining, which was a
Nice.
very difficult problem for us to solve.
Great. I'm rolling that video.
Sometimes if you want clarity, you want louder things to just turn down quieter things. That way they don't really have to be that much louder in order to be perceived as louder. To do this kind of ducking, Wwise has a feature where you can put a meter on one thing, check how loud it is, report that back as an RTPC, and use that number, that metered value of how loud it is, to turn down something else. For instance, on this Foley, which is a bus, this Foley bus is getting turned down when this value gets higher. Now the question is, where do we want to get that value from? And we can do it from other loud sounds made by this character or loud sounds made by other characters, but it has to come from one place. You can't have more than one of these on here, or it would get ducked into oblivion. So we found this to be somewhat restrictive in our mix structure. We wanted something that was categorized by character. We didn't want to put all the loud sounds together, which we tried, and it was too difficult to manage and too difficult to make changes for how a certain character should sound. And really what we're trying to get is this interactivity. And so what we did was set up this separate dynamic master bus that you don't hear. Nobody hears this. It goes to nowhere. But we meter it, and we send a lot of things to it. So on this little submaster here, we have a slow meter and a fast one, because you can change the speed of how fast they kick in. This one is basically instantaneous. Now, what we can do, because we have this clean and organized bus structure in the first place, is we can send them to that aux, and we can choose how much we want to send. Generally, I've got it all set at 0 at the moment, but we can take their attack actions and send them over. Projectile impacts, telegraphs are really important. Body falls, no, we don't care. Footsteps, we don't care. Foley movement, we don't care. Voice, also important. So up here, we've got these categorized by character type. So this being just a mob, we might want to look at, what are we doing with the mob voice level? Well, we kind of keep it at nominal. Voices are all important. What about the telegraphs? Maybe we want other character telegraphs to just sound a little bit louder. All the way up to attack actions, right? And then we can further take all the attack actions and say, okay, we want them to have this much impact on our ducking system. And they all filter up into here, which is a single place where we meter it.
Oh, yeah. Ducked into oblivion. That's what I want. And amazing hotkey skills on that. And great description of sidechaining, right? It's this idea of trying to use the volume of something to get something else out of the way, or in the inverse to, accentuate other sounds.
Yeah, definitely. You have reasons why you'd want to why you would want to mix, like have your mix arranged in a certain way, and then you have like reasons why you'd want to set it up in another way. And so this was sort of a conflict that I had for a long time, where we tried HDR, but HDR was difficult because you have to have, if you want things to interact in an HDR system, they have to be in the same HDR system. And since our game is like one potential giant melting pot,
Yeah.
we had all of the sound in the game in one HDR system, and it just sort of felt like felt overwhelming. Like when you the mix sounded overwhelming because it always sounded sort of a certain way. And it felt like I didn't have the control to pull it back from there. And so then we tried a thing where it's like, okay, let's put all the explosions together, but then we don't have like the stuff that I was talking about in this earlier slide of, hey, I have this arranged in a certain way because I want to be creative, and I want to be here looking at this and making my little tweaks and changes. And I want it to be like, I want to be focused on that, right? I want to look at it. I want to think about it. I want to change my little dials. And you can't do that if that character's sounds are all over the place.
True. Well, and that high dynamic range audio, not a perfect fit for every game. So it's a lot of tools in the box for mixing, and it sounds like sidechaining's really doing it for this game.
Yeah, I wish that I had an example video of it in action. I do not. I'm sorry, but this is a huge win for us.
Yeah.
The flexibility of mixing things into the sidechaining subbuses, getting that output back, and then being able to feed it back to like the unimportant sounds,
Yeah.
the value back to duck them, was great because like let's think about this, about what our categories are. Like I've talked about, like things are strictly categorized. They're categorized in different ways at each of these, in each of these three slides, in each of these three steps.
Yep.
And that's because we have a clear understanding of what this step is responsible for, right? So in this case, we want to take all explosions and you know, they're going to duck the mix a certain amount, right? I don't care
Okay.
which character it's coming from. I don't, yeah, so go ahead.
I think like an additional benefit of having this parallel, sidechain parallel bus structure that is just for metering, is that you can actually, and it's not being driven by the actor mixers or anything else, but just the buses. You can mute the buses and actually hear, oh, this is without any ducking, or this is
Yeah.
without any ducking from the projectiles, etc. So you can have like a reality check of, oh, actually my mix is better or is worse now, right? So whatever. I'm not like
Yeah,
assuming, okay, I think this is ducking this, but I don't know, right?
Nice.
So yeah,
It's kind of
yeah,
easy
to
to
be honest,
A/B. Yeah.
you might think that you see all of these buses and see all and think, wow, that must be so expensive and whatever. Like, no, I mean it's pretty good. I mean we can have like hundreds more, and
Yeah.
yeah, they
it's
don't
okay.
really matter. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, it's I was really happy when this solution worked, because it hits the requirement that we need. It offloads a lot of labor that would it offloads a lot of responsibility that would otherwise be on the main mix bus. Like mix bus now, mix structure does not need to care about this dynamic stuff. It just needs to be interacting with it,
Perfect.
just needs to send stuff to it and get information back. I will say that the one thing that it does sort of make you stick to is it kind of sets a restriction here that I didn't really talk about, which is stuff has to kind of be at a similar layer, right? Which you could say is good and clean for other reasons, that I'm not sending this character's sounds to the character bus, I'm sending it only to their sub buses, right? Because if I'm sending one of them up to be metered, then I don't want that same thing to get ducked in return, because, and we've found some of these loops, like you don't really hear them. It just like just doesn't work,
Yeah.
because it's loud, and so it's turning itself down, and then it's just weird.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and for our part,
yeah.
we'd like to work towards trying to make that more visible for folks in the future. Like we understand that, metering and applying that as a volume is a super common way of doing sidechaining. It's the preferred way today, and we're going to keep building better ways to do sidechaining while also giving you the visibility into how these things are working. So we hear you on that. Yeah, avoid those loops.
Yeah, it's been great. I love this system, and Horacio is right. You can turn it off and on.
Yeah.
And hearing it back to back, it feels like, because even though we have the priority system, when you fight a bunch of enemies, it sort of feels like like the audio has like climbed up a hill to like a really thick place that you don't want to be.
Yep.
And this really prevents things from getting dense. And since we've already you already kind of make this decision about like we can use it to do this fast metering and slow metering, and it's the same dynamics mix. Like there's no real reason to say that like some of them should affect music in a different way.
Right.
It's just really the rate at which you want music to be affected, or you want other things to be affected. So like we have one that slowly climbs over like 2 minutes, which again was something that I pulled from that from the Helldivers talk. of like, you know what, like you don't want the game to feel like a series of plateaus that are just reacting to like, cheaply to things that are going on. You want to go to a place and have it develop. You don't want ear fatigue. And so you can sort of like, well, let's sort of like, we can start the combat kind of hot, and then over 2 minutes, maybe all the character sounds get pulled down 2 dB or something, or all the, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Great trick. I love it. I
yeah.
love that we're all learning from each other as part of
Mhm.
this industry.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm sure other people have figured this out before, but I had not, and
I
I
love
was thrilled.
Yeah.
So I want everybody to know.
Yeah.
All right, so here's our key takeaways. If you want flexible systems, you need simple foundations. Simple pieces make simple foundations. Simple
Nice.
foundations come from separation of concerns. By breaking apart the things like what am I trying to do? What should be responsible for it? Then you can make those parts as small as possible and get them to work nicely with each other. And going all the way back to the beginning, the only way that we can figure any of that stuff out is by having a clear idea of what is our goal, what's the challenge, then you start working toward a solution.
Bam. Way to land it. Ah, what a great
Bravo,
contribution.
AJ.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks for coming on today and sharing your knowledge and experience. I got a wide one for you. What about where your passion for game audio came from, or the tipping point for you to decide that audio
Oh,
was a
man.
career path to follow?
Well, I think like I played Super Metroid in middle school, and that game still sounds good.
Yeah.
Like it gives you the like it's I still play it and I still feel the same way. It gets me. And then another one for me is I don't know if people are going to know of this, but the Tower of Babel level in Doom. Um, I think Doom 2, but it's the first time that you fight the uber badass cyber demon, the one that's got rocket launchers for arms,
Yeah.
and is like 20 feet tall. And the whole level, you start in this like at the base of a tower with like 6 doors that go out, and outside is this donut shaped arena with this giant monster that's going to take you like 15 minutes of just like pumping ammo into it to kill.
Yeah.
And the and it's got this like machine heartbeat that goes shikum 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 shikum, and you hear it immediately when you load into the level, and you've never fought it before, so you load in and you're like, what the hell is that? And then you turn a corner and it rockets you and you have to start over. um I don't know, just like how much, like how dynamic that is, and how much it like it feeds into and out of, like it goes in and out of like the way that you feel about it as you go in and out of the room, or you go in and out of safety and stuff.
Yeah.
It's silly, but it's sort of like it was just this very clear feeling that I had when I played it. So that stuff stuck with me, and then I played in like punk rock bands and went to school for recording, and kind of shifted away from music and more into the mechanics of things, and sort of like loved games the entire time. So it's difficult to like kind of pinpoint the moment from there. It's more like like as I was doing that, this feeling never left me of like what is the thing that I love? What I love is when the pieces come together and you have this unique experience. And that unique experience is what somebody intended. Like
Yeah.
they crafted this thing. and
great.
like setting up that Rube Goldberg machine. Like this was the perfect project. Like I wake up every day and just be like on fire wanting to do this stuff, because like this is the be all and end all for me, is to like solve this kind of problem.
Totally. Totally. And I love that our paths intersected, was it 10 years ago at this point?
Yeah.
As we were both working across projects, and so glad to have known you all these years and seen your trajectory arriving at this moment, working on this game. It really does seem like a good fit, and glad you made that pivot towards the interactive side of audio, because it is a force multiplier in games when it's working good. Horatio,
Yeah.
what about
Yeah.
you? What was your pivot point?
Yeah, well, what's not to love? I think game video games is the is the greatest art form there is, right? It's a computer program that has all of the other art forms in it. Super collaborative. And being an audio person, sort of like you have to at least be acquainted with all other stuff. Like, you have to know about UI, you have to know about, AI systems, like you have to know about gameplay, and because audio touches everything. And I don't know. So my background is mostly in music and music education. When I was deciding to go to college, my dad, my dad was like a very computer aficionado. When in my country, no one had like personal computers yet, or few people, right? And so I always loved computers. So kind of like one of my paths was to go to college and study computer science or music, because I also was really good at playing music, and I love learning music. I still love that. And then I decided to follow the path of music, I guess. I produce a lot of stuff, records, uh, play live. I was a professor in a university, and then I kind of like refound the love for music, because I never stopped playing video games.
Yeah.
And went back to school, decided to pursue this again as a career. And so sort of like now I'm back to computer science, let's say. Computer science, but audio never left, right? So yeah, you solve problems every day, even if you develop like techniques and kind of like knowledge. Each project, even in the same company, right? We have several projects at Heart Machine. The other projects are different. Kind of like you might say, okay, I'm gonna use the same trick here, but it might not work, or it might
Yeah.
have different challenges. So that's super stimulating, super interesting. Every day you solve new problems, you learn new things, you have to learn new tech. A new version of Wise comes and it's like, oh, that Python script that it took me a week writing, it's not relevant anymore, but cool, right? So yeah, I love it. I love it, and I think it's an amazing, career in terms of I don't know, you use your brain 100% all the
Yeah.
time, every day.
Well, and I'll share that
Yeah.
experience of that intersection of sound and the technical aspect, making stuff work, problem solving, and many of the solutions that you've brought today, speak directly to the game that's being made. And that's always going to be unique. And that's thrilling as a career, to know that there's always going to be something new to learn. And yeah, the tools are always going to be growing towards your needs. In the case of Wise, that Python script that became obsolete, hopefully it became a magic button that's way easier to access. But a
Yeah.
question coming from the chat about,
I want to.
Oh yeah, go.
I want to add just a thought to this, which is, like I think talk about the intersection of technical and creative. like the you have to solve a lot of difficult technical problems, but you end up with something that people they don't know what's happening under the hood. Like when I made like what I'm putting in text on the about the multi-position audio, it's like, what
Yeah.
are the benefits? Happy engineers, happy sound designers, and oblivious players, because it does the job and they don't know, so they don't care and they don't have to, and like
Yeah.
that's fine. But it's like, but it is in service of that. Like it's all in service. It's in service of the thing that you're doing. And the thing that is so hard about making games is that it's about like you're trying to figure out what you're making together. You
Yeah.
don't know, like you can't play the game until it's done, and that takes years. But that game doesn't have an identity unless there's a collective imagination that's like going into the same point in reality. So it's like you're asking yourself, like, not what am I making, but like what are we making? Like not what do I want to make, but what are we making? What is the thing that I'm doing? And or like orient all the stuff that you're doing in the right direction, you know.
Right. And that even speaks to the question coming in from the chat about, how does a project like this scale from early stages to production? How do you know about, what do you know about the project at the beginning, compared to even now in early access? It must feel like a completely different game in some ways.
Oh yeah, like I mean, our early like vertical slices were, there are different things that people are trying to solve early on. So it's just trying to say like, what should character movement feel like? Um, how many enemies should I fight at a time? What should the areas be like? So you start with like we had um initial maps that the artists are waiting for tech art to spin up this. um I think okay, at the core of this question is about like the web of game development, right? It's like we have people who can make models and do art and all that, but they're waiting for this procedural system. And then you've got technical artists, which are the people that make the procedural system, that are saying, well, what's it supposed to look like? What like how am I supposed to lay things out? They're waiting for the artists. So we sort of have the artists make a level just by hand, and then the technical art, the engineering and technical art is then trying to replicate that procedurally. So along the way, like we have vertical slices. We have like stepping points that where we can play the game, like where there's a stated goal of like, hey, in 6 months we're going to have this and it's going to be ironed out, or at least functional. And in the meantime, we're playing on the pre-made, the hand-built levels. I think audio has a very difficult time in general with developing something like this. And that's just the reality of it. And that's that if your job is to summarize, but the game is like literally just pieces and all of the pieces are incomplete. Um, like you can't really even do the music in those like static levels, like we
Yeah.
kind of like we did it, but you think about like, well, what are the things that I can focus on? So we had a point early on where Troupe and Joel are on the project, and they're trying to figure out the music, and so they made these tracks that were really long. They're like 7 minutes long, and it's just like, don't care, just make it. And then when it came time to do like the more adaptable systems, it's like, cool, well, I've already worked out what instrumentation to use. I've got all these like themes that I've written. I've got all of this. I've got all of that. So it's about looking at what everybody else is doing and figuring out how to be functional.
Bam.
Yeah, the best you can, I mean, the best you can do is just have like good, is make good informed decisions, but that's the best you can do, right? And be prepared to be flexible and move forward. And that's like, I mean, what is important, I think, is to be always studying the tools that you are using, because that will tell you where are the capabilities of it. I mean, what you can do with it, right? And so if you are not sure on how the tools work, right? I mean, so if you are want to know Wise, learn Wise, do your best to learn it upside down. What are the capabilities of it? Because that will give you like these tools to solve future problems. And then you commit, and then maybe if that decision changed and it's like, oh, I have to go back, well, whatever, I mean, that's, I guess,
Yeah.
video game development iteration is what.
Yeah.
It's
I think
true.
I'd also like I would also add to this there's a thing where you can kind of do your part, because everybody's sort of like you're sort of making the building and the scaffolding at the same time, and so you don't want to just wait on other people. You want to provide them the things that they might expect from audio to like provide a mood, right? So having music in like early levels and stuff is something that then can help inform, so yeah, so I think about it, and I've kind of got this thought in my head about like I call it like internal and external needs. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a bland name, but it's like, look, inside of the audio department, I can look at what I can kind of anticipate for the next 2 years, and I could lay out a schedule and say, this is the way that we're going to do it. But I know that that doesn't really show anything to the people outside
Yeah.
of our department. And I know that maybe 2 weeks from now, it would benefit them to have this. And even though that might not be the best thing for like my schedule in isolation, it's probably the best thing for the game as a whole, which is then better for me as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really well put. Great sentiments from both of you. I'm going to field one of the questions and kind of piggyback off of what Horacio was saying about learning. The question was, what's a good place to start with Wise? And we have a great YouTube video on our channel called Getting Started with Game Audio Using Wise. That's just a very simple introduction to game audio, puts some things into focus, and then presents a bunch of resources for folks to be able to, go deeper. And when I say deeper, what I mean is we have a series of free resources on our website, our certifications, a 101, 201, 301, going further into, optimizations and our sample projects, which we have available for free across Unity, Unreal, and then a custom game engine. All of these coming with the projects for each of the game engines, as well as the Wise project, its sources, and all of its setup. And so we have just a ton of resources to bring you in gently, or drop yourself right in depending on what kind of learning style you have. If you're a visual learner, you want to put your hands right into the engine and just get down with it. It's there for you. So everything is free and accessible via audiokinetic.com and through the Audiokinetic launcher. So dig into some of our resources. We dropped them here into the chat, and we'll get a link to Hyperlight Breaker so that folks can jump into that early access and hear some of the amazing work that you and the team have been doing as part of this early access. Last question. What's your go-to karaoke song? If you had to, what's it going to be?
Maybe Close to Me, The Cure.
Oh, nice.
It's just it's a tight killer song. It's just right, and it's pretty easy to say.
Nice. I did Love Cats last year. It was fun. You get to meow a couple times. But I'll be waiting to hear that next time we're at karaoke together. Horacio, what do you got? Karaoke.
Oh, I mean, I don't know what's my favorite, but I think the last karaoke, the last time I sang karaoke, I sang "Come On Eileen,"
Oh,
like here in the States. But I don't know if that's my favorite. I mean, my native language is Spanish, so probably not my first choice if I wouldn't be in America. But yeah.
Well, what would your, I mean, like, what would your, not all of our listeners are here in America, so.
Oh man, I'm very
would-
into like Latin American folk music, and so I don't know, it would make, but things like that. So yeah.
nice. The closest I got is La Isla Bonita from Madonna.
There you go.
Make no claims. Fantastic. Thanks for riding the tiger here today with us on Wise Up on Air. Absolute pleasure. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with the community. I know that in the future, I'm going to have folks on this live stream who are going to point back to this and say, oh, I stole that from them. And I'm going to be like, yeah, well, it's not stealing, it's sharing. And so
I hope so.
thank you.
I hope they do.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, I hope to see you soon. Okay.
Thank
Folks
you,
who
Damien.
tuned in,
It was
Thank
great.
you so much.
great to have you in the
This
chat.
is really fun.
Take care, and we'll see you next time on Wise Up on Air.
All right.